start?
Yes, Chairperson, we are ready.
Okay, let's flight the agenda. This is the agenda, honorable members. Opening and welcome. Consideration and adoption of the agenda. Apologies. Opening remarks. Briefing by the department on the human settlements on the National Housing Needs Register. Implementation. Progress, challenges, and plans to address them. Briefing by the Department of Human Settlement on informal settlement upgrading and relocation strategies, including policy or regulatory changes being considered. Deliberations, consideration and adoption of minutes, closure. Can I have a mover for the adoption of the agenda? Honorable Ditabe.
Good morning, Chair, to you, Minister, DG, honorable members. I moved formally for the agenda to be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any seconder? Honorable Magagula.
Thank you, Chairperson. And I second the adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any alternative view? Nothing. The next item is apologies.
Good morning, Chairperson, and greetings to everybody in the platform. Chairperson, I received an apology from Mr. Mpiti. He is not going to be able to join us today due to party work. Ms. Dlamini is going to join us late. She is just finishing the exam, and the minister is going to leave us early. So she requested early departure. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much. Unless there's something, I think we can accept the apologies. Agreed? Honorable members, are we agreeing to accept those apologies?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item is opening remarks by the chairperson. I've already welcomed the minister, welcome the DG and your team. I see you have other DDGs on the platform. Welcome, honorable members already, and all our staff from the ministry, from the DG's office, and from Parliament. Can we mute? Thank you very much. Honorable members, the purpose of this brief, today's meeting, is to brief the Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements, to brief the Portfolio Committee by the Department of Human Settlement on two major items. That is the implementation progress on the National Housing Need Register and informal settlement upgrading and relocation strategies, including policy and regulatory changes under consideration. Both issues are structurally linked, as the NHNR is the beneficiary management instrument upon which the credibility of every Department of Human Settlement delivery target depends, while informal settlement upgrading is the single most dramatically accelerated target in the DHS annual performance plan. The National Housing Needs Register serves as South Africa's central database for individuals and households requiring government housing assistance or access to adequate shelter. The system captures household information and records specific housing needs, including fully subsidized housing units, service sites, and rental accommodation opportunities. The NHNR was established to support evidence-based planning by municipalities and provinces, improve beneficiary management, and promote transparency and fairness in the allocation of housing opportunities. It also aims to reduce opportunities for corruption by maintaining a centralized and verifiable database of housing applicants. Despite its intended benefits, the NHNR continues to face several challenges as it is required to manage approximately 3.4 million applicants, placing significant pressure on its administrative and operational capacity. Key challenges include persistent housing delivery backlogs, outdated beneficiary information, fragmented and overlapping housing database, limited availability of suitable land for development, systemic corruption, and administrative errors in beneficiary identification and allocation. During the Department of Human Settlements presentation of its annual report to the committee on the 8th of October 2025, concerns were raised about the province's underutilization of the NHNR. Members noted that inconsistent use of the system undermines its effectiveness as a national planning and allocation tool and may contribute to inefficiencies in beneficiary management and housing delivery. The committee further expressed concerns on the underutilization of the NHNR, coupled with persistent housing delivery backlogs, which may compromise the department's ability to accurately assess housing demand, prioritize beneficiaries, and ensure transparent and equitable allocation of housing opportunities. To this end, the committee emphasized the need for greater integration and utilization of the NHNR across all provinces, regular updating of beneficiary information, and strengthened oversight mechanisms to enhance transparency, improve planning, and support the effective delivery of housing programs. This is closely linked to the challenges associated with the informal settlement upgrading and relocation programs. While upgrading informal settlements and provision of alternative accommodation remain key priorities in addressing South Africa's housing backlog, the end goal depends on accurate beneficiary data and effective planning systems by the NHNR informal settlement intervention, which continue to face significant obstacles, including securing land tenure, balancing in situ upgrading with relocation where necessary, providing adequate basic services within constrained municipal budgets, and ensuring meaningful community participation throughout the planning and implementation process. The effective utilization of the NHNR can assist the government in identifying and verifying eligible beneficiaries, improving planning for upgrading and relocation projects, and reducing disputes relating to beneficiary selection. Furthermore, reliable housing demands for accurate data to support more targeted resource allocation and strengthen coordination between national, provincial, and the municipalities. The committee therefore noted that improving the functionality and utilization of the NHNR is critical not only for housing allocation, but also for advancing sustainable informal settlement upgrading, enhancing transparency, and ensuring that housing interventions respond to the needs and priorities of affected communities. The NHNR is an essential planning tool designed to ensure transparent and accountable housing allocation. However, its operational impact is currently limited to low government adoption, outdated applicant data, significant delivery backlogs, and fragmented intergovernmental coordination. To resolve these enunciated weaknesses, including housing backlog, the government must optimize the NHNR by implementing regular data updates, strengthening oversight, and integrating the register across national, provincial, and local sphere, securing reliable localized demand data, which is critical for executing equitable informal settlement upgrades, managing community relocations, and building sustainable human settlement that national frameworks such as the National Development Plan envisages. So this is what we'll discuss, and we expect the department to brief the portfolio committee on. And I've also realized that there's a serious public interest in our discussions today, because people would like to know as to how they are going to be benefit from the National Housing Register. My apologies, I didn't see the Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, greetings. My apologies. When I last looked at the people who joined, I didn't see you. My apology for that, Honorable Deputy Minister. You are heartily welcome. Thanks very much. I think I've recognized others, and let's continue. Welcome, Minister. Welcome, Deputy Minister, the DG, and your staff, and honorable members. Apologies for that. Let's go to the next item, which is the presentation. However, I will allow the minister to give us her word, and thereafter delegate whoever is going to present. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to the honorable members of the portfolio. Good morning to the Deputy Minister, Director General, DDGs, and the overall team that is supporting him. Ladies and gentlemen, particularly community members that are joining us from home. Heartily morning, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity you have afforded to us for this invitation to make a presentation on the two items that you have indicated. Chair, let me just request your permission to switch off my camera. I am in front of a project which the portfolio once gave us a very good tongue lash. It does prove that it works, Chair. I am joining the MEC and the mayor of Eguruleni in part of the Clayville projects that two were blocked and were giving us problems. But today we are, well, both of them are continuing, even contractors are on site on the other one. But here we're coming on a story where we've even reached the allocation and we are with beneficiaries today who are predominantly old people who will be receiving what government gave them as a promise in the Constitution. And that is why, Chair, I've requested for early departure from here. I'm traveling to Cape Town to make sure that I join the cluster in our oral replies at the House in the afternoon today. Chair, we come to make these presentations before you on the critical important area of the National Housing Needs Register, as we have indicated, and the informal upgrading and relocation strategies that we are embarking on. But Chair, before I make this brief remarks on these two presentations, allow me again to echo another apology on behalf of the department and the entity SHRA. In our last portfolio meetings of February, we showed misalignment between ourselves and SHRA, and we made a commitment that we will go and engage between the shareholder and ourselves and SHRA, just to make sure that we put our best foot forward and we can be able to deal with the task at hand, which is to house our people and bring back their dignity. Much as our discussions are not yet concluded, Chair, but we have met in earnest and we are finding one another at the table. And we're hopeful that if futuristically, as we get back into the committee, we should be reporting positively that we are dealing with the task at hand. Chair, the demand National Housing Needs Register as a strategic base, database to collate, harvest, and manage housing demands. It's a critical enabler, that's how we view it, which we are using to understand the scale and location and to profile the households in need of housing in the country. I do believe that the DG, in articulating with DDGs, will also give a bit of progress in relation to updates on the partnership between ourselves and the SITA, which is solely on the basis of trying to improve the information. The budget vote was tabulated last month, as you are aware, and in the previous fiscal year, the plans we mentioned were afoot in relation to address the challenges which are besetting the system through State Information Technology Agency. Chair, beyond the technical aspect, the department also looked inwardly in terms of how it could assist and support municipalities in relation to registration management and ensuring that the categorization of needy as per the policy of the department is primarily adhered to. And we will remind one another that the most important category of people who our policy prioritizes is our elderly parents, grandmothers, grandfathers, who are still without dignified shelter, people with disabilities, and child-headed household. Portfolio Committee, in its past administration, had already taken a decision which we are trying to assist the municipality to still comply with, in terms of ensuring that we target the earlier registrations who are mostly our parents, our grandparents, dating from around 1998 onwards to around 2007, 2008, to make sure that we clean that area in relation to allocation. We must be saying that this target is meeting some of the requirements, but in some instances, we are finding it difficult, either both as a province or as the department. We rely solely on municipalities, and we still continue to observe the gaps that Chair has alluded to, where even when you are rolling out a project, you roll out a project, you hand over to relatively younger people, and when you are just about to leave, they bring a grandmother in a wheelbarrow and they say, Minister, she has applied in 1997, and she gives you all the paperwork, including the promissory number that was given to her or him, and is without a house. Some were able to respond appropriately and timeously, though belated, but sadly some even pass under such circumstances where we have not been positively responded to. In terms of the informal settlement upgrading program, we are facilitating the structured in situ upgrading of informal settlement through the 4-phase approach of application, planning, installation of interim services, installation of permanent services, and ultimately consolidating in relation to housing. It must be noted, Chair and honorable members, that in situ upgrading is impossible in some instances, particularly due to environmental risk, which includes flood lines, wetlands, dolomitic land, and disaster-prone areas. And relocation in these instances become the necessary measure. We must mention to honorable members that our relocation strategy has been met with significant community resistance. It takes us longer, Chair, even when the land has been identified, to relocate people. At first, it's their unwillingness to move. Secondly, when you have convinced them to move in the areas where you are relocating them, because there are also backlogs, they say, yes, you can bring them, but they are not going to get houses before us. And this actually emphasizes the point in the opening remarks that Chair made, that it is important for us to make sure that the database is consolidated in the National Housing Needs Register, but it is clear, it is assisting us in terms of accountability, but it is treating everybody free and fairly, particularly the aligning to our policy. Of course, we then have got a challenge of relocation in terms of dolomitic land and disasters of such types, prone areas. We got a presentation on update in our Mintop last week from both HDA and the department in the progress we're trying to make in the areas of Western, Kutsong, Centurion, and all that in relation to dolomitic relocation program. There's very little progress, Chair, though our team is still trying to hop into making sure that it happens. But we do believe that once ourselves are consolidated in a proper manner to provide a service and a package as government to respond to such areas, we will be better off than responding individually as Department of Human Settlements, which makes it difficult for our package to be accepted by the communities who mostly have invested their lifetime in building houses in areas that are now dolomitic. And now they find our package of 40 square meters house not acceptable in comparison to what they would have invested. So we're still trying to harness the policy shift in those areas. We're not promising anything, but it is one of the major problems that we have that stifle the discussions for us. Chair, as I'm lending towards closure, we continue with the social facilitations to highlight the dangers of the environment in communities in that there are people find themselves in. We're making some wins in KZN in the flood-related relocations. We will talk about it some other time. But it is important that I mostly mention that we have reallocated 2.9 billion over our MTF period from SSDG to informal settlement upgrading grant to support non-metro provinces to upgrade informal settlements. Chair, this is key to equate or to bring equilibrium of some sort to provinces that they operate outside the metro structure, to make sure that we also push them in relation to formalization and upgrading of informal settlement. We once again would urge provinces to use these resources to better the living conditions of the people living in informal settlement. We are now moving strongly, Chair, convincing ourselves at a technical level that we would want to engage with MINMEC sometime next week and look into the position of how we could say provinces maybe must minimize in the purchase of land, now that we have land parcels that have also been given to us by Public Works, but rather push more on the building of our houses. And that will stretch the legal money that we have in terms of building. So, Chair, let me ask you to grant me the permission to invite, of course, with your authority, the DG and the team to make the two presentations. And again, thank the portfolio to always keeping us on our toes, that we are compelled all the time to do the work that we are mandated as a department to do. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. When you are ready to leave, you are allowed to do so. We'll remain with the Deputy Minister. DG?
Person, thank you very much. And I wish to recognize you and the members of the Portfolio Committee. And I also wish to recognize the presence of the Honorable the Minister on the platform, and to indicate that I will come at the end to give the comments and to also give an update that the Minister had indicated I should. But right away on the National Housing Needs Register, I would invite DDG Ngongo together with Ms. Mulalo Mutiche to take the committee through the presentation, if the chairperson so agrees. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, DG. DG? DDG, please unmute.
Oh, my apologies, Chairperson. I was indicating that, Chairperson, we will allow Ms. Mutige to do the presentation for the Portfolio Committee. Thank you, Chair. My apologies for being muted.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee. Good morning, Minister, Deputy Minister, and the management of the department. I'm going to switch off the camera. I just wanted to greet with the camera on. The presentation is already on screen, and Chairperson, I must indicate up front that the way that we had configured the presentation, it's going to change slightly because the Chairperson has already spoken to the items that we have in this presentation. And we will try by all means to address most of the issues that the Chairperson has alluded to as we go through the presentation, and make sure that we do not repeat most of the things that have already been spoken about. The next slide, if we can put it on slideshow, talks to the contents, which I'm not going to read. And let's move on to the next slide. Those are just the table of contents. Okay. I don't know if it's on my side, but the presentation is not moving. Kosi. If we can move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. Let's skip this one as well. And of course, the next slide will be talking to the background and what the NHR is mainly used for, which is, let's go to the next slide, which is what I think the chairperson spoke about to great length, and as well as its purpose with regards to how it supports planning and targeting by providing credible data, as well as how it interfaces with the HSS. One thing that I need to talk to, of course, next slide, please, is that the NHNR, which was not emphasized as the chairperson was introducing this topic earlier on, is that the NHNR, of course, it records a housing need at household level. And of course, the issue of whether a person...
Hello, your slides are not moving. I'm not sure whether it's you who's in charge of the slides or is it Kosi?
It's Kosi chairperson who's running the slides. Our network in the office, yeah.
Kosi? Is Kosi on the platform? Yeah, she is. Secretary, can you assist?
Colleagues, I will continue, Chair. My apologies. I think I have a problem with the network. I've been running the slides, but they seem to be frozen.
Secretary?
Hello, Chair.
Can you assist with running the slides for the presentation?
Okay. Can you see the slides, Chairperson?
Yes, I think we're on slide
Number
3 or 4. Past this one.
Yes, number 3. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Yeah. Okay.
If I may proceed, Chairperson. Okay, thank you very much. So we had also outlined the role of the NHNR, but this is one element that, yes, the chairperson has already alluded to, so we are not going to talk to it in detail. Let's move to the next slide. This slide, chairperson, we brought it in to be able to indicate that per province, these are the numbers for the NHNR. They keep on growing, showing that, yes, the provinces are heeding the call to update the NHNR continuously. That is recording the need. And it is very evident what we try to show as well is that we are also tracking the issue of prioritization and also distinguishing within the list the age, the age issue, and of course focus with regards to allocation. Once you are approved on the HSS, that is the first priority will be for people, for the adults that are 60 years and above. So what we are showing again is that what we have picked up is that which I as the chairperson was speaking, I realized that we would need to address this as well, to say what we know is that with regards to the informal settlements, because we also checked that, it's just that we did not include it in this table, that almost 726 registrations are from the informal settlements, which is almost 18% of the total that we have on the NHNR. And also the issue of the elderly, we also have looked at the percentage to say they are around, when we look at the total, those that have already been approved and those, of course, that are only on the NHNR, which would constitute around 900,000, they are sitting at 24%. So that's what we track. And the reason why we track that is so that we can be able to engage the provinces with regards to the allocation, that you need to prioritize the aged as well as people that are in imminent danger for those informal settlements where relocation needs to be done immediately. But of course, the challenge, Chairperson, would be for a person to be assisted, they have to meet the qualification criteria. Being on the NHNR does not mean that it's a guarantee that you're going to receive a house. The guarantee is only achieved when you have filled in the application form and we have taken you through the databases, your home affairs, so that we can check if you are a South African citizen and also whether you have not benefited before. You need to meet the qualification criteria so that you can then move on to be approved on the HSS. So this is what we thought we should share with the portfolio committee to show that these numbers, yes, it's almost 4 million, but we are tracking them as we continue. And the challenges that will follow, some of them which have already been spoken to, we will even show how those challenges are mitigated. Let's move on to the next slide. The next slide, it's analysis of what I was speaking about to show the spread across the provinces and show what it means, but I will not go through that. Let's go to the next slide, slide 7.
Secretary, can you move the slide?
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I am not going to go into detail on this, but what we are showing is that the NHNR slide 7, yes, Chairperson, we are on slide 7. Slide 7 just is showing that the data confirms that the register remains an important tool for understanding the scale and profile of the housing demand nationally. However, the figures also show that registration on the NHR does not automatically translate into approval on the HSS or immediate housing assistance. And the wide gap between those registered and those approved highlights the need for continued work to strengthen beneficiary verification, improve alignment between NHNR and HSS, and support the conversion of registered demand into actual housing delivery. The next slide, slide 8, talks to the progress itself. And what we are saying is that in terms of implementation progress, the department has continued to use the NHNR to strengthen the demand side data, supporting planning monitoring across provinces and municipalities. And it is increasingly used to triangulate data to improve reporting consistencies with standardized templates and processes that we are introducing continuously. And of course, it supports targeting for priority groups, as I've indicated, the elderly, persons with disabilities, and thereby enhancing evidence-based decision-making in the sector. And of course, there are challenges. Slide 9 talks to the challenges that are there. There's issues of capacity gaps at provincial and municipal levels. Many officials require training to effectively capture and manage data on the system. We know very well that there's huge staff turnover at provinces at municipal level.
Chairperson, Chair, I beg your pardon. The presenter is always 2 slides ahead. When she says 9, we are at 7. If the projection could be in sync with what she presents, please. Thanks.
Now 7 is the heading. If you check down there on your right, is 9. Although it is 7
Okay.
on top, but on your
okay.
right is 9.
All right.
Can you see that?
You.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Continue. Let's
Thank you very
proceed,
much.
Mulalo.
Thank you very much. I was alluding to the capacity challenges, gaps that are at provincial and municipal level, and that means that at national, because the training for the NHNR usage is driven from the national department, we are most of the time having to deal with this challenge of training so that the capacity gaps can be bridged. There are also challenges related to data quality and reliability, including inconsistencies in how data is captured across provinces and delays in the submission of information. So the information that would have been captured, which I have shown, when we take it for the searches, you might find that there are missing numbers on ID numbers. There are a lot of cleaning of the data that we have to deal with before we can get to the approval process. And those are some of the issues that we're battling with. And of course, the broader sector issues such as weak intergovernmental coordination, as well as accessibility of the system. In the very rural areas where there are connectivity issues, there's always the gap between the capturing and as they do not have connectivity most of the time. But those are issues that we are alluding to as challenges. On the next slide, we're talking to the plans that we've put in place to be able to address these challenges. The strengthening of the capacity, the training, we run training session across municipalities, across provinces on a continuous basis so that we can support them to improve data capturing and system usage. We are also, our focus is mostly on improving the data governance, standardizing reporting templates. That's what we Thrive we are doing. We are also verifying the data processes, enhancing the data quality as they capture through those training initiatives that we are putting in place. We also look at how they themselves are capturing that data. And of course, better alignment between NHNR and HSS. That is when the beneficiary, the applicant has now become a beneficiary approved on the HSS. We are also prioritizing system improvements and digitization aimed at enhancing system performance, stability, and accessibility. The portfolio committee knows about the digitization process that we are embarking on, where we are improving the NHNR and the HSS so that they are able to respond as their legacy. They are legacy systems, but we are improving them so that they can better respond and be modernized. And of course, we are taking lessons from what we're experiencing now with the current challenges that we have on the NHNR, on the HSS, to say the new system that we are building, it's responding so that we can have better response with regards to prioritization of beneficiaries. As we are also strengthening intergovernmental coordination and accountability, including improving the timely submission of data and ensuring consistent use of the system across all spheres of government. And of course, taking from what the chairperson was alluding to earlier on, these issues of the NHNR vis-a-vis the informal settlements upgrading, and that is talking to issues of those informal settlements that have to be where we need to do relocation. And of course, there are issues there that we need to allude to say, because the NHNR is not, it is a national or provincial system that is recording the need. So the question is where we have informal settlements, the timeously capturing of the households that require assistance and being able to verify them. It's what is key for the NHR to be very much effective. And of course, in instances where even if there are registrations, most of the registrations or people that are registered are not, for example, meeting the qualification criteria, the gap will always be there, so that you realize that where we have to do relocation after we've recorded who's in that informal settlement, and if the majority of them do not meet the qualification criteria, sometimes they even refuse to register the need on the NHNR. There's also the issue that the chairperson addressed, issue of land, that the NHNR issue of land availability. How do we make sure that these are aligned? What we're sitting with are land parcels, of course. If they do not have bulk, they do not have the proper services, you find that even though we have registered the need within that specific area, and there's land that is available, the fact that it might not have been serviced at that point in time due to lack of bulk and other servicing amenities, then it delays the process of those that are registered to be able to access the services of the department, or to be registered on the HSS as beneficiaries, because that would have to wait for the land to be serviced so that they can be accommodated properly. On the next slide, we are concluding on this presentation, where we are saying overall the NHNR remains a critical tool for us. We understand the housing demand and we support the allocation decisions through that. But that is on the basis that whoever sits on the NHNR as the applicant meets the qualification criteria when we send them for searches, as well as the availability of serviced land where they can benefit. And that its full effectiveness depends on addressing the capacity constraints, improving the data quality, and strengthening system utilization. And the department's current interventions are therefore focused on ensuring that the NHNR can better support planning, targeting, and the conversion of registered demand into actual housing delivery outcomes. Chairperson, the next slide just talks to the recommendation, where we would want the portfolio committee to note the progress, the challenges, and the plans that we have in place to address the challenges on the NHNR. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. DDG, do you have an addition?
No, Honorable Chairperson, thank you.
DG?
Chairperson, thank you very much. And just to indicate that Mulalo has covered the ground and all the questions you have raised, save for the fact that just to indicate to the committee that we and CETA have finalized all the planning aspects of the modules. They are now at the procurement stage of getting a partner to support the development work they are busy with now. We are now ready, Chair, to come back to the portfolio committee and to present to yourselves a timetable of the rollout over the next 3 years, what the program will and which modules will come first. That synchronization process, we have finalized on it. So that will be the update, Chair. We will, when it is opportune and when the committee is ready for us and wishes us to come brief, it will come jointly with CETA to present on the entire program. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. DM, you have something to say on this presentation? DM? Okay. Let's get into the next presentation. DG?
On this one would be led by both DDG for policy, DDG Mkongo, and also DDG Dumalisila responsible for informal settlements. And I would wish that DDG Mkongo takes the lead and start first, and then DDG Dumalisila can come on the implementation side of things. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. DDG Mkongo.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, members, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG and colleagues. Just trying to show my face. This is me, Nana. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, for the opportunity for us to do this second presentation. As the DG has highlighted, I think for me it's just to highlight the aspects relating to legislative prescripts as well as the reforms that are underway in relation to policies and with specific focus into the human settlements upgrading and relocation strategies. If we can move to the next slide. I'll jump over these ones. It's just the outline, which I'm not going to go into detail. As indicated, is really the purpose is to brief the portfolio committee on the two aspects in terms of the policy aspects as well as what is happening in terms of implementation. If we can move to the next slide, please. So this is part A, which I will be taking the committee through. Chairperson and members, it's just to highlight in terms of the context to saying that the housing subsidy framework was introduced in 1994 to address historical spatial inequalities and improve access to adequate housing as well as basic services. And in 2004, with the introduction of the Breaking New Ground strategy, there was a clear dedicated informal settlement upgrading instrument that then sought to support a focused response into addressing the resurgence and increase in the informal settlements. So based on that policy framework, it was really to promote the identification of well-located land, optimization of locational value, and the development of sustainable human settlements within municipalities that were identified as primary implementation agents. The upgrading of informal settlements program, which is commonly called UISP, was subsequently incorporated into the National Housing Code. And the National Housing Code itself is the regulations for the sector and is a policy instrument for structured upgrading of informal settlements. What it does then, it provides and promotes in situ upgrading, and I think, Chair, it was part of your opening remarks in terms of stipulating where. But also then what it emphasizes is that it should be established whether it is feasible to do such in situ upgrading. And I think the Honorable Minister also alluded in terms of the aspects that have to be taken into consideration when then an in situ upgrading has to happen. But also it does provide for relocation in circumstances where land is unsuitable for a human habitation. So the policy trajectory has been reinforced through what we previously called the MTSF, the medium-term strategic frameworks, which have then culminated into what we have now as the medium-term development plan. Currently looking to 2024 up until 2029. And within that, it then focuses really on the upgrading of about more than 4,000 informal settlements using the various phases, which I will be talking to later on. The next slide, please. That is just, Chair and members, just highlighting where we come from in terms of really the consideration why we also there had to be a policy shift, not only just focusing in terms of the local issues that we are dealing with, but also to ensure that as a country, we are aligned into the international commitments so that then we are also, because the basis of those international instruments seek to address the challenges that are faced by persons living without adequate housing and promote the development of sustainable, inclusive as well as resilient human settlements, which is also aligned with our constitutional prescripts. So from a policy point of view, then the UISP serves then to ensure that as a country, while we are focusing in terms of addressing our own needs in terms of informal settlements, but also there is alignments to what we commit as a country internationally. I think the platforms like the participation in the World Urban Forum enables us then also to participate, but also learn in terms of policies and strategies with other countries in terms of how to deal with the issues around ensuring access to adequate housing from a policy point of view. So the key objective of the program is to facilitate the structured in situ upgrading while improving the living conditions through access to basic services as well as security of tenure. The next slide, please. So I think in terms of the objective, I've already spoken to, it's really to ensure facilitation of structured in situ upgrading of informal settlements across the country. What then are the key outcomes of this is, one, security of tenure, health and security, as well as empowerment. So those are the key outcomes that the policy provisions of the informal settlements program are focusing on. The next one, please. This aspect is just talking in terms of the phased approach, which the program is being implemented. And I think as DDG Ngaga will be talking into it will go into detail what is really happening on the ground. But what is important is the 4 phases, which the Honorable Minister had highlighted as part of her opening remarks. Phase 1, focusing mainly in terms of application and planning. Phase 2, focusing on installation of interim services. Phase 3, focusing on installation and of permanent services. And then with the last phase, which is phase 4, focusing on housing consolidation. So this is what then the part B of the presentation will be taking the committee through in terms of really what is happening. I must indicate that as part of the MTDP targets, is really to focus on what is happening around phase 3, where then there's really a permanent engineering services and infrastructure being delivered. Not that the other aspects are not important, but is to ensure that at least that is one of the aspects that enables us then to measure the impact that is happening on the ground. Can we move to the next slide, please? I'm not going to dwell much on this, as indicated in terms of the relocation strategies. The important priority is to in situ upgrading, is to say where people are located, so that there is no movement. They can be upgraded where they are. However, then there are different aspects that needs to be considered in terms of whether that upgrading where they are located is feasible. And when it's not feasible, then alternatives have to be considered. And this is very much critical at this time where we are experiencing a lot of climate change effects, with the housing environments being the most affected. And the minister highlighted also in terms of what is prevailing around mining areas in terms of dolomitic areas and the impact that comes when people have already settled, have already expanded in terms of their properties. However, then you find that there is an after effect and in the challenges around relocations now are requiring a different perspective in terms of how then do we work around it going forward. And those are the discussions as part of then the policy reforms that we are looking into as a department. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, I think in terms of then the policy and regulatory reforms, this slide is just giving the historical background when it comes to the informal settlements upgrading program. But what I want to emphasize on is then the process that the department has embarked on, which is a key policy reform, which was the development of the white paper for human settlements, which was approved by Cabinet in 2024. Which then really provides an overarching policy framework for the development of sustainable human settlements and proposes various policy positions that are aimed at strengthening and enhancing the existing programs. If we can move to the next slide. What then are the key aspects that are coming as part of the reforms is that the white paper for human settlements proposes a number of policy reforms aimed at strengthening informal settlements upgrading and promoting sustainable human settlements development. What then are those key reforms? It's really strengthening infrastructure connectivity through improved access to municipal services and social amenities to support integration into the urban economy. So one of the key aspects of the white paper is really integration, not only even in terms of just the services, but also in terms of with the work that pertains to the work of other sector departments, so that we can make a sustainable settlements into the future. But also it focuses in terms of promoting resilient, safe and functional settlements that are able to withstand social, economic and environmental shocks. And the emphasis is that in reviewing the existing upgrading instrument, it serves to improve flexibility, responsiveness, and alignment with the community realities. What this means is that the white paper puts emphasis in terms of moving away from rigid policy instruments, where then there could be context relevant interventions into the future, so that whatever in one geographical area is not applicable, it may not be forced into being applied in a different environment. But it also then seeks to improve planning and implementation through enhanced coordination, capacity support, and context-specific interventions, as I have alluded earlier. But also strengthening intergovernmental coordination, understanding that the role of developing human settlements is not only the department's function, but it also entails working with other sector departments, so that we make sure that not only houses are delivered, but amenities are provided for, but also in terms of then ensuring that there's access in terms of opportunities. But also then to advance outcome-focused reforms that promote inclusive neighborhoods, secure tenure, access to basic services, and overall improve socioeconomic opportunities. The next slide, please. The other aspects in terms of then what the reforms are focusing on excuse me, it's really to prioritize the vulnerable groups. I think there was also a discussion earlier on in terms of what we are doing as a department. But also going forward to ensure that as much as the communities are beneficiaries, they are involved meaningfully through social facilitation, and also making sure that they become part of the solution of their needs going forward. So the other aspects focus in terms of the social compacts, which then will also link in terms of then the collaborations with other stakeholders, whether from the public, the non-governmental sectors, as well as the private sector going forward, and promoting institutional support mechanisms, participatory upgrading approaches, active resident participation, but also then strengthening municipal capacity through technical support on an ongoing basis. But also it focuses in terms of then land protection measures, but as well in terms of then finding mechanisms of ensuring land availability, because when we talk about relocations, one of the big challenges is then the availability of land into the future. If we can move to the next slide, please. My apologies. So this is just showing the roadmap in terms of where we are in terms of the development of the white paper and the work that we are doing. What is important post the approval of the white paper is then also the beginning of the review of the housing code, so that there is alignment in terms of what we have as policy proposals, that they're aligned to the housing code. But on the left side, it's just showing in terms of the work that we are currently embarking on in terms of really advocacy in terms of what the white paper implies, because then it will ultimately shape into the review of the Housing Act. But also the important aspect that we are embarking on as a department is the amendment of the PI Act, which we have now, the bill, which is currently at a consultation stage across the different provinces in the country. I think with this week being the last week in terms of consultations. But what is important around informal settlements upgrading and the PI is really to ensuring that the work of the municipalities in ensuring a provision of housing is not interrupted by illegal invasions. But also then in terms of what would have been planned on the land parcels that ultimately get illegally occupied, but also including the buildings. So the PI is a very important instrument that the department is prioritizing, so that there is an enabling environment from a legislative point of view to support the work that we are doing. And there's also work that we are busy with then in terms of then the revision of the current Housing Act into the Human Settlements Bill, which I think as we progress, then it's a work that we'll also be updating the committee on. But also the other aspect that is of priority in terms of really policy shifts around the rental interventions and the options. There's also work that we are doing together with the Operation Vulindlela within the presidency, which is really looking into saying how then do we do things differently so that those that are rather seeking for access to economic opportunities, but their preference is a rental, but also in terms of then the location, how then do we drive that? There's piloting work that is happening also as part of that, in order to ensure that by the time then we finalize our policies, there would be aspects that would have been tested in terms of the impact that we can ultimately make going forward. So those are the key aspects that we wanted to highlight as part of then the policy review. Can we move to the next slide, please? I'm not going to go into details. This is just highlighting some of the aspects that we are working on as part of reviewing the housing code into the human settlements code futuristically, but this is work in progress. And I think this is all. Can you move to the next slide if there's anything that I've missed? I think, yeah, that is all that I wanted to highlight from a policy and legislative reforms. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, DG.
Thank you very much, DDG. DDG Malisile.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, greetings to yourself, members of the Portfolio Committee, the Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, and colleagues. Chair, my focus will be on the implementation and the progress thereof, as mentioned by the DG and DDG earlier on. Chair, following the delivery of more than 2 million houses, housing opportunities, which was after 1994, we then saw informal settlements continuing to grow rapidly across the country. And by mid-2000, we had approximately 2,600 informal settlements that were accommodating close to 1.4 million households throughout the country. Now, we had a realization of the need to move beyond housing construction, as the DDG indicated, to also focus on the incremental informal settlement upgrading model. On a growing scale, then there were complexities on the informal settlements that was shaped by the need to dedicate the technical support, particularly to municipalities, to strengthen the planning and implementation thereof, which then resulted in the introduction of the National Upgrading Support Program, which is what we normally call the NASP. On this next slide, we showing how we came about the NASP as one of the policy, as part of the policy shift, but also the NASP in making sure that there is enough support to assist with the implementation when it comes to the upgrading of the informal settlements. So the NASP was founded on the policy shift that was introduced through the BNG, or Breaking New Ground strategy, in 2004. Now it became part of the housing code that the DDG was referring to, and specifically, which is Chapter 3. The policy frameworks recognizes that upgrading of informal settlements requires far more than the provision of housing opportunities. So that's the reason why then we came up with the incremental development approach, which is what we have as part of the in situ program as well. NASP provides technical support, which is aimed at improving the effectiveness, consistency, and scale of informal settlement upgrading throughout the country. Chairperson, I do want to indicate that as a result of the NASP program, but also in trying to make sure that we understand exactly what we have on the ground, what is it that we're grappling with in terms of the informal settlements, where exactly are they located, and whether we can be able to implement the intentions of the incremental program. We went further and through the support of this NASP program, partnering with our HDA as well as the Department of Land and the Agriculture and Land Rural Development, we geomapped these informal settlements that we had at that time. And ultimately, what we have now is 4,000 for more than 4,000 informal settlements. We categorized these informal settlements into the following categories. We have these 4 categories. Category A, it means the informal settlements is ready for in situ upgrading. What's that supposed to mean? It means the land is suitable for development. Tenure can be formalized. Municipality engineering services can actually be installed with minimal constraints. Now, these are your low-hanging fruits, informal settlements that we shouldn't be experiencing challenges, but unfortunately on the ground, we are provinces and metros are experiencing challenges. You have the second category, which is your B1 for interim services where they are required. It then means that the in-situ upgrading, it remains feasible. However, there are risks that need to be mitigated, looking at the issues of the dedensification, what we commonly know now as more of the reblocking, infrastructure improvement, interim services, as well as what we would require before we go for a full upgrading. You have category B2, which is partial relocation that is required. Now, this happens in instances where certain portions of the settlement is located in unsuitable land, such as your floodplains or steep slope or any other challenges that we may actually encounter. And in some instances, you have your dolomitic areas, and a combination of in-situ upgrading and relocation intervention is therefore required. This is also where you get a lot of resistance, because then people have settled themselves in one area for the longest time. Now, when you try to assist and you want to resettle them properly, you then discover that some of the areas you can't do anything. You just have to relocate the members of that community, and you end up not doing it because of the resistance. Your last category is category C, which is a total relocation where it has to happen. And this is as a result of the fact that you find that the settlement is located on land that is unsuitable for human settlement development, and it cannot be serviced. So there is no infrastructure that can actually be installed in those areas, which therefore means that that particular province or the municipality, the metro in particular, should identify a suitable land, an alternative suitable land, where you can then relocate the members of that community and settle them in a proper area, where you can be able later on to install infrastructure and be able to provide the required basic services. So the categorization framework, it supports the phased implementation of the upgrading program, like I said earlier on. On the next slide, Chair, we also continue, we're now giving an indication as to how did we end up with the informal settlement upgrading grant. This happened, so all these things had happened, the policy shifts, that the policy reforms that the DDG spoke to, the introduction of the NASP that I was indicating, the work that was done, the categorization, and therefore it required a dedicated funding to make sure that we accelerate the implementation of this program. That's when between the department representing the entire sector, as well as the National Department of Treasury, came up with the conditional grant, and that was in effect 2019 and 2020 financial year, which was focusing on the provinces as well as the metropolitan municipality. The grant supports the provision of basic services, as well as the bulk infrastructure and all the services that are required in as far as the upgrading is concerned. These, you find them in the phases that the DDG was mentioning, between phase 2 and phase 3. This is where you find all the services that are listed on the second column. And the intention of the grant was also to strengthen planning, implementation, and the collaboration with the other departments. I have already cited the example on the work of the NASP with HDA and the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. It also focused on geomapping processes to enhance planning, which is what I alluded to when I was mentioning or taking the members through the categorization. So if you look at those categorization that I mentioned, it makes it easier for metros and the provinces to actually plan for their informal settlements, because they know the status and the condition of the area within which those the informal settlements are actually established. You know for sure that this one you can be able to proceed, but this one you can't be able to proceed. That was the whole intention of categorizing those informal settlements. Now, on the next one, Chair, you look at where we are in terms of the commitments that we made as a sector, where we have now we're sitting with more than 4,070. Can we go back to that slide? Thank you. We're sitting with more than 4,075 of informal settlements across the country. We have not given a breakdown in terms of the metros, but we cover the metros under the specific provinces. On the whole, when you look at Western Cape or you look at Eastern Cape and Free State and those with the metros, then that number will actually include the numbers from the metros. And all in all, we are working on a number of 4,075 of the informal settlements that we have targeted over the 5-year period within the MTDP process or cycle. On the next slide, Chairperson, this is a commitment that we have made, and both the Minister and the Deputy Minister, whenever they talk about the informal settlements upgrading and what needs to be upgraded by end of the MTDP 5-year cycle, these are the numbers. This is the breakdown of the 4,075 informal settlements. Now you look at this and you then take into consideration what the DDG was presenting in terms of the phases. So for the longest time, provinces and metros have actually were spending more funding as well as more time on phase 1. And there has been a push to make sure that at least they progress to the next 2 levels, which is your phase 2 and phase 3. So where we want to be by the end of 2029, we want to make sure that at that time, we do not have any of the provinces or the metros still implementing phase 1 in the informal settlements. We are also mindful of the fact that there are informal settlements that are actually mushrooming from time to time. So we have taken that into consideration. We are saying in terms of those that we have profiled so far, let's deal with them and conclude on those informal settlements. We're saying the expectation is that a number of the informal settlements by that time should be at phase 2, but at least let's have 1,288 at phase 3, which is your municipal engineering services and the link and all that. And ultimately, at least let's have 632 of them completed and formalized. Then we will know that we are progressing well as the sector in terms of formalizing the informal settlements. On the next slide, Chair, we then had to come up with the figures in making sure that at least there is alignment to the commitments that have been made within the sector. Now, this is where you look at the provinces. The allocation of the numbers was informed by quite a number of factors, Chair and members. One, we have, I think you still have provinces where the informal settlements are higher than other provinces, but we also took into consideration the fact that you have quite a number of provinces that lost funding along the way in the previous planning cycle and within this current cycle. We also have quite a number of revised allocation for the sector on the informal settlement upgrading. So we have lost a lot of money. Things are no longer the same. There has been reductions throughout over the past 3-4 years. There's been consistent reduction on the allocation. So what has since been allocated to provinces is not enough for them to cater for everything that they have. But nonetheless, we agreed that this is the work that they will be doing. So the first 2 years have come and gone, Chair, which is your 24-25, 25-26. This is the work that has been done. Now the focus is from 2026-27 up to 2029. We are currently on 26-27, and the expectation is such that by the time we conclude the term, which is the 5th year, at least we should have concluded some of these informal settlements. If we had not done this, Chairperson, then it would have been difficult for the sector to account as to whether we are making progress in formalizing the informal settlements or not. But we will still account in terms of the phases. On the next slide, it's the same approach, but this one is specifically for the metros. So the target and the approach and the process is the same as the provinces, where it is expected that by the time we conclude the MTDP, these are the number of informal settlements that at least should be at phase 3. We can get far more than this, Chairperson, if things are progressing well on the ground. I think you alluded in your introductory remarks that, as well as the minister, that there are instances where there has been resistance, and these are some of the issues that we have to mitigate along the way. But obviously, they do impact on the timelines in terms of the targets that we have set for ourselves as the sector. Now, coming to performance, Chair, we're just giving members a glimpse of how things have progressed. On the next slide, Kosi, how things have progressed. I think I will not spend too much time on this, but safe to indicate that we've tried to account for the performance since 2021, 2022, just after a year after the introduction of the informal settlements upgrading conditional grant. And this is how things are looking in terms of the phases. You have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you have the service sites in the informal settlements in those municipalities. Now, on the next one, it's for the metros, and I will skip that slide and go straight to the next slide, which is, thank you. Chair, on this one, we just showing the members in terms of the year that ended by 31 March. For metros, it's ending on the 30th of June this month. This is how things have progressed. Members would recall that as part of phase 1, we have social facilitation. This is a program that is meant to unlock all the challenges and mitigate the risk on the ground. But still, we continue to have challenges. Now, members are just a quick one to indicate that throughout the performance, I will be indicating Q4. For provinces, the cycle has concluded. It concluded end March, but for the metros, they are now concluding Q4, and they will be reporting towards the end of Q4. So we are accounting for Q3 as the financial year has not yet ended. When you look at the social facilitation, this is what was planned, and I want to quickly, let's go back to social facilitation. I just want to put a disclaimer for members as we move along with the performance, that in instances where we have a planned target and we have 0, the 0 does not necessarily mean that there has not been an achievement. But there are instances, if we focus more on the last column towards the left, the right, which is, it has comments. This is where we're giving an account in terms of work in progress. So because most of these projects are multi-year projects and they are infrastructure projects, so they take a bit of time. As long as a project is not concluded, then we don't list it as achieved, but we will have it under the comments just to account for it up until it has been concluded. Let's move to the next one. When we look at the reblocking and pre-feasibility study, this is what has been happening in the provinces. There's work that has been happening, as well as the metros. The metros right at the bottom. I mean, at the bottom. So the reblocking is expected to actually assist in making sure that we settle the densified informal settlements properly, so that we can be able to service them better, but also that we can be able to install the necessary infrastructure to be able to provide for the basic services. Where there is resistance for reblocking, it makes it difficult for the project to proceed, which therefore means that as long as there's resistance, the formalization of that informal settlement will not happen. But where the communities do allow for this work to happen, then at least it assists. Ultimately, you do see the installation of the bulk infrastructure, and ultimately the members benefit from the basic services. There are provinces that did not plan for reblocking because that could have been done previously. The metros as well, Mangaung in particular, they have a peculiar situation. They have not planned for it. And one of the reasons is because that it seems like most of the people who are invading the land in that area, they target the land that has already been actually, there is a layout, there's everything, they just need to do installation. So by the time they settle themselves in those areas, they're properly demarcated, the lands are pegged and everything. And that's why for the projects that they have earmarked, they did not, there was no need for them to do a reblocking in those projects. On the next slide, Chair, is just an illustrative example of what is it that we end up with when we do the reblocking. So you find a densified informal settlements, you are allowed by the community to do the reblocking, and once it has been reblocked, then you have this layout plan. This is an example for Ekurhuleni in Sakile informal settlements. You can see from this map that the settlement now is actually done properly. There is space in between the units. There is access to the areas, so it means that they can be better serviced by any of the sector departments depending on what is required. But this also assists, Chairperson, it's one of the mitigating factors when it comes to the disasters, because once you have done the reblocking, so it does help that whenever there's a challenge, especially in instances of fire in informal settlements, it doesn't quickly spill over to the next one, because then you have space in between. Can we move then to the next slide, where you have your pre-feasibility studies? This is what was done by the provinces on the top one, and then you have the bottom one from the metros. So you have Gauteng province that they still are busy with the process. And then you have the KZN one, we still have to verify the overachievement. You also have the COJ that has got 16 projects that are at various stages of implementation in terms of the pre-feasibility studies. We can then go to the next one that talks to the interim services. On the interim services, Chair, you have the likes of Gauteng. I think I should have included the picture. I didn't, my apologies. They have a unique services that they are providing, especially on the side of the ablution facilities that are actually clustered in one area, as well as the water provisions for interim services that has been working well in quite a number of informal settlements. Similarly, with the city of Johannesburg, they have some of those programs that they are implementing when it comes to the interim services. The next one is looking at the formalization of the informal settlements. You have your Free State that has had delays from the municipalities in terms of the municipal planning tribunals, because these are plans that must go through those processes at every municipality so that they can be approved and be able to proceed. In Mpumalanga, you have 5 townships that are registered. The townships are registered, township register are opened. This will assist with the approval of the layouts. Then it means they can be able to proceed with the provision of services. You also have the BCM that has approved general plans in 5 of the informal settlements that they had planned for the current financial year. On the land acquisition, Chair, which is the next slide, this is how the provinces and municipalities had planned for. Northwest has been able to acquire land You also have eThekwini as well as the City of Cape Town and BCM that are busy with the acquisition. The bulk and link infrastructure, which is your biggest of the projects on the next slide. For provinces, you have Gauteng, which has a projects on water and sewer connection. They have been completed in some of the areas like Afri Village. You have beneficiaries that were relocated to Siahlala, at least they've agreed, by Pei and the other areas. And then you have some of the bulk sewer at different stages in Sebokeng Extension 29 and Extension 30, as well as Impumelelo. Northwest, you have the bulk sewer in Boitekanong Extension 6, which is under progress. So we are expecting that by the next financial year, which is the current financial year, then they will start with the projects. For the metros, you have City of Johannesburg, the ground rent project, as well as the Southern Farms development for relocation purposes of the Slovo Park. This is where the portfolio committee had actually visited the area, and in that meeting, chair and members, you would recall that they were very adamant that they may not consider the relocation, but we're hoping that this would actually be possible. And the last one, Chairperson, second last one is the next slide, where, Chair, we are indicating that the informal settlement upgrading remains a key priority of government human settlement program, and it is central to the achievement of sustainable, inclusive, and resilient human settlements. As the department, we continue to advance this objective through the combination of the policy reforms as well as the interventions that we are putting in place in partnership with other spheres of government. Progress has been made so far in terms of some of the upgrading interventions that the DDG Shongo alluded to. And lastly, the development of the human settlement codes and relative legislation reforms will assist in strengthening the implementation of the framework on informal settlement upgrading, as well as the relocation interventions. Chair, we are presenting, we are recommending that the portfolio committee should note the work that the department is doing in as far as the informal settlement upgrading is concerned, as well as the relocation strategy and the reforms that are underway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DDG. DG, do you want to add?
Indeed, Chairperson, I wish to say a few words relative to this matter. And just to indicate that some of the reforms we are also infusing here into ED is around the review of the utilization of IBTs in as far as dealing with informality and dealing with informal settlements, and also where we respond to disasters that is under consideration, as well as the elimination of a possibility of eliminating TRUs in our response. It's also part of the work we're doing policy-wise in as far as this is concerned. But the bulk of the ground has been covered and the challenges have been mapped out. We have managed now to crystallize clearly, Chair, which ones would require legislative review, which ones require systemic review, and which ones require policy reviews, and which ones require a practice strengthening as well as delivery methodologies overhaul. And we have get ourselves on a responsive plan to deal with all of that, so that we are a bit more responsive going forward, and that all the key enablers we have now set in motion the work around those review processes. And DDG Mkongo's presentation does indicate those key sensitive areas. And finally, from an implementation point of view, as you can see, Chair, on what has already been agreed to, Minister approved and Cabinet endorsed and approved, we have already begun with the review process and the implementation right away. And while we are continuously reviewing other areas and publishing policy statements, we are on the sidelines implementing those that are pretty straightforward and that we are clear that they've got to come first as key enablers to enable broader reform and change in the transformation space for informal settlements. And I think one of the key tenets is what both Didi Mkongo and Dumalisile points out to, in prioritization of phase 3 informal settlements that have been categorized as such. The prioritization there really indeed is intended to ensure that we see greater impact and we can start measuring that. And we can have for the first time finalized and formalized informal settlements that have been brought about by the work of informal settlements upgrading. Then the support program we're providing both to provinces and metros. So that will be my addition, Chair, and that we will continuously brief the committee as this unfolds and as we go deeper into the work of bringing the necessary reforms. We have not only had the committee, we have listened to you carefully, and we have listened to the concerns that were previously raised. And as you can see from our presentation, we are on the money. We are responding directly to some of the earlier observations the committee have made as weaknesses in the system, and we're addressing those. Thanks a lot, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, DG. DM, do you have some comments before I allow members to interact with the two presentations?
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to the honorable members on the platform, the DG and his team. Chair, the minister's submission to the portfolio committee has laid a foundation of the discussions today, and all the presentation have alluded and tried to respond to the questions and the concerns the portfolio committee had. So I wouldn't want to go by presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, those are the two presentations. Can we interact with them? Questions, inputs? I'll start with Honorable Poole, followed by Honorable Ditebe. Followed by Honorable Ditebe, followed by Honorable Gamede. Then I'll take others. I see many hands, yes. Let's do that. Let's interact with the two presentations, but let us not take a lot of time. Honorable Poole.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning, members, and acknowledgement to the DM as well as the Minister in her absence, and well as DG and his department. Chair, yes, I have a few questions. First, I want to start off NHNR, but allow me to just say the following. The most significant finding is the sheer scale of housing demand reflected in the system. Nationally, almost 4 million individuals are recorded under NHNR, yet only...
Let
yes.
me interrupt you. PLO, Justice, please mute. There is a background sound that is disrupting our meeting. Justice, please mute. Kosi, can you call him to mute his mic?
Will do, Chair.
All right. Honorable Poole, continue.
4 million individuals are recorded on the NHNR, yet only more than 500,000 individuals have progressed to approval on the housing subsidy system. This means that more than 3 million registered individuals remain on the NHNR without approval, highlighting a substantial gap between housing need and housing delivery. Gauteng alone accounts approximately plus minus 1.5 million registrations, followed by the Eastern Cape, almost 800,000, and KwaZulu-Natal, more than 500,000. The presentation also exposed serious weaknesses in the system, including poor data quality and inconsistencies, capacity constraints at provincial and municipal level, weak intergovernmental coordination, connectivity, and accessibility challenges there, and the fact that registration does not necessarily translate into housing opportunity. So in essence, Chair, the NHNR remains a valuable planning tool, but its usefulness is undermined if the data is incorrect, outdated, or disconnected from actual housing delivery programs. Now, my two questions for them. Chairperson, the presentation indicates that 3.97 million individuals are recorded on the National Housing Needs Register. Yet only more than 500,000 have been approved on the housing subsidy system. Can the department clarify whether the figure of 3.97 million should now be regarded as the most accurate reflection of housing demand in South Africa, and how this relates to the commonly citing housing backlog of approximately 2.4 to 3 million households? Question 2. The presentation acknowledges that registration on the NHNR does not automatically translate into approval of housing assistance. What percentage of individuals currently registered on the NHNR have been waiting for more than 10 years? And what measures is the department implementing to ensure that registration results in actual housing opportunities rather than simply remaining on a database? If it comes to the department, I want to say the following. While the policy framework focusing to accelerate the upgrading of informal settlements is comprehensive, the implementation data reveals significant underperformance across several provinces and metropolitan municipalities. Progress against targets for social facilitation, reblocking, interim services, formalization, and land acquisition remains extremely poor. In some categories, provinces recorded zero delivery despite planned targets, while municipalities continue to struggle with procurement delays, social compacts, project planning, and implementation capacity. The presentation therefore highlights a recurring challenge within the human settlement sector, strong policy intentions, but weak execution on the ground. The department further proposed legislative reforms, including amendments to the PI framework, a human settlements bill, revisions to the housing code, and strengthening community-centered upgrading approaches. The success of these reforms will ultimately depend on whether government can improve municipal capacity, accelerate project implementation, and convert planning into measurable outcomes for households living in informal settlements. Question 1. Chairperson, the department has set an ambitious target of upgrading 4,075 informal settlements in 2000 to by 2029. However, the presentation shows significant underperformance across multiple programs, including social facilitation, reblocking, formalization, and interim service, with some provinces and metros recording little or no delivery against planned targets. What specific interventions will the department implement to ensure that these implementation failures do not undermine the achievement of the 2029 target? Question 2. The presentation repeatedly notes that projects are in progress despite substantial underachievement against annual targets. At what point does the department regard persistent non-delivery by provinces or municipalities as unacceptable? And what accountability measures are triggered when upgrading targets are repeatedly missed? And 3, the department correctly states that the in-situ upgrading remains the preferred option and that relocation should only occur where land is unsuitable for human settlements development. What safeguards are in place to ensure that communities are meaningfully consulted before relocation decisions are taken? And how does the department measure whether relocated households experience improved living conditions and livelihood opportunities after relocation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ditabe.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Greetings to you, to the DM, the DG, and the entire executive, accompanying the DG, honorable members, fellow South Africans. Chairperson, thanks very much to the department for the presentation. Chairperson, on behalf of the African National Congress, last week, upon the tabling of the report on the study tour to Brazil, we commended the department for setting aside 10 informal settlements to be upgraded. I presume those are informal settlements at phase 3. And I think the department has shared with us various stages of progress. And I think in respect of the Free State, if that number correlates to the 10 informal settlements that the department has set aside per province, the number 4, which basically speaks to the number of approvals that the department in the province has recorded in the context of municipal planning tribunals. My question, therefore, is what is it practically that the department is doing in the context of intergovernmental relations to ensure that the good intentions of the department to set aside those informal settlements for upgrading, as I said, presumably at phase 3 of those informal settlements, that there is no holdup and that there can only be acceleration. Because it's one thing for the department to agree, for example, with MECs at MINMAC, and we've seen all the good intentions, and the minister earlier on indicated that she was in Ekurhuleni to deliver on one of the projects which we have raised as a concern from the point of view of slowed progress there. But, to the extent that ours is a constitutional architecture that recognizes that the 3 spheres of government, while interdependent and interrelated, each one of them is also distinct. Now, that poses very serious problems because local government, for example, can harp on its autonomy to make its own decisions, while in fact negatively affecting the well-being of South Africans, which is contrary to the letter and spirit of our constitution as enshrined in Chapter 3, cooperative government. So, Chairperson, what is it that the department is doing to ensure that it anticipates such hurdles, such obstacles, so that it delivers on such noble and good intentions as the one of the 10 settlements per province? Secondly, Chairperson, we have non-state actors like the Development Action Group, South African Slums Dwellers Institute, and Difunukwazi, which complement one another from the point of view of advocacy to promotion of micro development in communities, etc. It would seem to me that in line again with the letter and spirit of our constitution, specifically at Chapter 7, that local government must interact with communities and community organizations, and I want to therefore situate the 3 organizations and others like them within the context of community organizations and by extension communities, and understanding, as I said, that the 3 spheres of government are, yes, interdependent, interrelated, but also distinct. But my emphasis for purposes of my question now is on the interrelatedness and interdependence of the 3 spheres of government. And so it would seem to me that it is in the interest of the department to ensure that it enlists the help of non-state actors such as those that I have mentioned, so that in addition to what the department has correctly done to identify the informal settlements, as I've mentioned, we can accelerate the pace and we can up the ante on the talk of the work that gets done by the department insofar as the formalization of these informal settlements. Lastly, Chairperson, it is one thing indeed, just still on the informal settlements, to say 10 informal settlements, and we do understand this is within the context, again, of a very tight fiscal envelope. And I think the department has said that about 2.3 billion rand, presumably out of the 7 billion rand, has been set aside for non-metro provinces for informal settlements. So how many more informal settlements within the MTF period are going to be upgraded from phase 3 up to the desired level as envisaged by the department, so that we give our people hope? And we know that resources are not unlimited, but I think people need to be pointed to a direction that where they can see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So my focus is on that, Chairperson. The last one, Chairperson, when we visited the Free State, we interacted with a number of communities in Mangaung, in Machabeng, etc. I'd like to say to the department that there is one particular informal settlement there where members of the community pleaded with us to be assisted. So far, Chairperson, to the credit of the department, I have not witnessed any resistance to assist that particular community, nor have I witnessed any such resistance on the part of the Provincial Department of Human Settlements. But there has certainly been resistance on the part of the municipality, and then it takes me back to the issue of the IGR. I can safely inform the committee and the department that the matter has since been escalated to the Office of the Speaker by the community in question, just to lend authority to their grievance, so that the matter can then come back from that vantage point of the authority of the Office of the Speaker. Because, as I say, the problem is not with the department, either at national nor at provincial level, nor is it with the committee, but with the municipality. So it is something that we need to attend to. Certainly, that particular informal settlement will have to be proceeded with from the point of view of phase 1, geotechnical surveys, etc. Something that's really pretty easy to do because the HDA was willing to roll that out, to do the enumeration. But there is obviously palpable resistance on the part of the municipality. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Gamede.
Thank you very much. Chair, let me greet the portfolio committee led by yourself, Chairperson, and also our support staff, and also greetings to the department led by the Deputy Minister and also the DG and the entire team. Chairperson, allow me to, or let me first start with this one on a lighter note. Thanks, Chairperson. Let me applaud you for allowing the minister to leave this meeting early, so that she will be able to come this side, so that because we've got so many questions from our constituents, people on the ground asking, they really want adequate housing on a lighter but serious. Thank you for allowing me. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me first start with the first presentation, which is more okay, the informal settlement upgrading presentation. Let me start with that one, Chairperson. I think, Chairperson, the department's own slide data tells a stark story that its conclusion slide does not fully reckon with only 19% of planned targets were realized across provinces and metros in the most recent performance period, and yet the medium term development plan commits to upgrading all 4,075 identified settlements by 2029. The language of progress has been made in the conclusion reads as institutional reassurance rather than honest accountability, and members deserve more than they deserve more than that, Chairperson, from a sector carrying a 71-month average projection. Chairperson, given that phase 2 delivery across provinces stood at only 27 outputs against planned 333, which is an 8% achievement rate, and that metros fared even worse on phase 3 bulk infrastructure, what specific remedial mechanisms has the department activated in the current financial year to actually reverse this trajectory? And by what measurable milestone will the committee be able to assess whether those mechanisms are working before 2026-2027 mid-year performance review? Chairperson, I would like to also suggest that maybe the department should be requested to submit within 60 days, Chairperson, a differentiation recovery plan for the 5 worst performing provinces and metros, disaggregated by phase and settlements category that includes binding contractor performance timelines, consequence management steps already invoked, and the specific bulk infrastructure blockages being escalated to the National Treasurer or to the relevant water authority. And also a general commitment to the targeted intervention is insufficient at the stage of the medium-term development plan cycle, Chairperson. Let me quickly run to National Housing Needs Register presentation, Chairperson. It is concerning that a register carrying nearly 4 million individuals, the backbone of every beneficiary allocation decision, the department makes is still characterized in its own presentation by capacity gaps, data inconsistencies, and limited system accessibility in some areas. There are no new challenges, Chairperson. There are the same structural weaknesses that parliamentary oversight has flagged repeatedly. What is missing from this presentation is an honest accounting of how long these conditions have persisted and what's the and delayed delivery. My question, Chairperson, of the 3,455,000 plus individuals currently on the national housing subsidy of the national housing needs registration register, only those who have not progressed to housing subsidy system approval, what proportion have been on the register for more than 5 years? And what is the department's plan to communicate meaningfully with these applicants about their status, particularly the 786,365 individuals aged 60 and above who remain unserved, and whose needs are both current, urgent, and constitutionally recognized. Chairperson. On that one, I'll send to the secretary my recommendation. Chairperson, on parliamentary research units brief, the research units brief makes a point that deserve to be said plainly in the committee room. 1,790% increase in phase 3 targets from an estimated 51 settlements in 2025-2026 to 965 in 2026-2027 is not an ambitious plan. It is an impulsive one, and approving it, Chairperson, without interrogating the operational basis risk the committee lending institutional credibility to a number that the department itself cannot yet substantiate. This brief framing of this as a governance risk is diplomatically accurate, but the committee should be prepared to name it as a credibility risk for the entire APP framework. The brief correctly identifies that the January 2026 floods in the Limpopo and Mpumalanga destroyed and damaged more than 3,100 homes. The majority of these informal structures in hazard-prone locations, and that's the emergency housing fund addresses post-disaster shelter, but not underlying locational vulnerability. What is the department's current policy position on whether UISP projects categorization formally incorporates climate and disaster risk profiling? If not, when will this be remedied? Thank you very much, Chairperson. I would like to stop there for now. I'll come back at a later stage if time still permits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Honorable Comment, remember the ruling by the Deputy Speaker on Friday. Let's respect it. So that I don't get into trouble.
Okay, no, it's fine.
All right. Thank you. Honorable Kehakile, then we get answers, then we'll come back to other honorable members. Honorable Kehakile.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, Minister. Members, good morning, everybody. Chairperson, let me welcome the opening remarks of the Minister. They are just so encouraging. We now see where we are going, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And also your opening remarks, Chairperson, you represented us very well. And I also thank you for that. And then I've got questions, Chairperson, but I'm not going to take long. The first one is with regard to the informal settlement expansion. I'm more concerned about Northwest because based on the 2025 General Household Survey, it confirms that 19.2% of informal dwelling is from Northwest. And currently they are only busy with upgrading of two informal settlement, Mbekisan and Popomolefe. And those two projects, they are really not moving. There's a report that the shacks are still there and whatever. And Chair, if you can recall, when we were at KwaZulu-Natal, the department indicated that people, they did not want to relocate. We went there and people, they moved and the project continued. But this same thing is now happening in Northwest, and it's not really acceptable to get the excuses when we expect progress based on the projects. And then I just want to find out as to what is the department now doing or supporting Northwest to make sure Popomolefe and Mbekisan, there's a progress on those two projects. And then when it comes to verification of the National Housing Register chairperson, I just want to find out from the department if their biometric verification is integrated with Home Affairs. Is it fully operational? What is the status of this registry cross-referencing? And what is the operational status of the biometric and this registry integration across all the provinces? And which provinces has not yet achieved the full integration? And what measures is the department taking to ensure this integration are fully functional and consistently reported to Parliament? And then the other question is with regard to the integration of community-led or working with our stakeholders. If you can recall, Chair, we had a meeting with stakeholders last week and they presented their efforts. So I just want to find out from the department, how is the department integrating community-led enumeration models such as those practiced by the SDI Alliance into NHNR registration drives? And then what evidence does the department have that National Housing registration is actively reaching the most valuable household in greatest need, including those in unserviced and newly established informal settlement, Chair? If you can recall, our stakeholders, they indicated that they go deeper when it comes to data gathering. So I just want to know from the department, how are they working with those alliance and others to ensure that the data that they've captured is the correct one? And how do they work together? That is all that I wanted to say, Chairperson, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honorable members. DG, let's deal with the questions from the 4 members. We'll then come back and give other members an opportunity. I'm just afraid if they become so many, we may end up having challenges. DG?
Yeah, thank you. I'll ask my colleagues to start and I'll answer any of the questions that have not been responded to. We can start with Malalo and then go on to DDG Mhlongo and Jumalisi.
Okay, in that order as directed by the DG. Malalo?
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee. I'll try to address the questions that have been raised now. I'll start with the ones that were addressed by Honorable poll, and where they asked about the issues of the housing backlog. And in response to that, what we would like to indicate is that the NHNR is not equal. It is not equal. Okay. The NHNR is not equal to housing backlog. As we indicated earlier on, those that have registered on the NHNR, they've registered their need for housing assistance. And of course, that assists us with planning on and knowing who needs what and where they are. That's the basic thing. So of course, the backlog, housing backlog is bigger or broader than the NHNR registration, because you find that the backlog would include everybody, all households that do not have adequate housing. And of course, that is something that we would find, for example, on the census or on the general household survey as captured. But with regards to the NHNR, it includes households that are aware of that there's such a system and they have access and have registered. So if they have successfully registered, it does not mean they represent the whole backlog in its broader context. So that is the response to that one, whether it represents the housing backlog. And then there's the question on the issue of the waiting period. I will link this up with the question that was also asked by Honorable Kamete with regards to whether 5 years, 10 years, long waiting period. And of course, in response to that, yes, there are households that have been on the system registered for longer waiting periods. Yes, that one we admit. And this is made up because of what we indicated, that what the NHNR was made up of waiting lists that dated back 94 to 96 that are now imported into the NHNR. So and some of the households, if we go and look, the data will tell us that yes, they might have waited for more than 20 years, particularly those that come from those legacy municipal lists. And even though during this response, I will not be able to give the exact numbers, but we confirm that yes, there's a cohort of households that have been waiting for longer. And this is mainly driven by, of course, that historical backlog migration, the slow conversion of demand into delivery, land and project constraints, as we've discussed earlier on in the presentation. And of course, being on the NHNR for a number of years should not be interpreted as if they have been waiting and waiting and waiting until we have done further analysis of the data, because some of them, as they are registered, their circumstances change. They do not remain in the same housing condition for over all those years. And of course, there's no guarantee for those that are registered that they are eligible or they will meet the qualification criteria, as registration does not guarantee allocation, as was previously noted. So the issue then that follows, it's what is the National Department doing with this whole situation of long waiting periods? We have indicated that we have embarked on the data cleanup process, and it's been ongoing for some time. And we're doing this so that we are able to show a credibility and gain public trust. But we are not just doing this by talking. We are under development, as we have indicated, a new system that is going to enhance the NHNR as well as the HSS. So of course, what we are talking about, it's multi-pronged, of course, to say there's consolidation of the housing demand into a single national system. And what we want to do is to start the cleanup so that we go to each record and be able to delineate those that have where the conditions have changed over time. And because we are talking about huge numbers here, it then means that it's an exercise that might take a bit of time for us to conclude on, because we need to remove those that or put them aside. We never deleted any record ever since dating back to the historical waiting list information that was imported. We never deleted any record. So we are in the cleanup process where those with circumstances that have changed need to be delineated. Those that probably are no longer eligible over the years are also delineated from the group. So that's what we are trying to do and what the new system is looking at addressing. And of course, there's the last part that was where Honorable Kiachilwe asked questions around all provinces. Firstly, it was whether the NHNR is linked with the Home Affairs and the issue of the biometrics. Yes, what we are linked, yes, with the Home Affairs. We indicated earlier on that once there's a project that is approved in the area where households have registered, they are given an opportunity to apply. They are given application forms, they apply, they update their information as maybe things might have changed since registration, and this then is run against, for example, your Home Affairs system, so that we check for specific things that are linked to information that is sitting on the Home Affairs database. And of course, if they do qualify, then we run those applications against other systems like your SASA, for example, your SARS, all those to check, even the deeds records, to check if the applicant or the citizen has benefited before. So with Home Affairs, yes, we are linked with Home Affairs. With regards to full integration, yes, all provinces are integrated with the NHNR currently, but there is the Western Cape that took longer to come into the NHNR. For a number of years, they ran a separate needs register on their side. But what we have done over time, and currently we are importing their data onto the NHNR, hence the low numbers if you look at the presentation with regards to the Western Cape. We are still in the process of importing, and as we import, there's issues of data cleanup and so forth and so forth. So the records that we have on the Western Cape now are those that we have concluded importing, but it's still work in progress that we're working on with them. They were the only ones that took time to come into the picture. So I think, Chairperson, I've tried to respond to the questions that have been raised. And of course, those that talk to the long waiting periods, I've pulled them together to be able to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. DDG Mplongo.
Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think most of the aspects maybe DDG Dumalisile will talk to, but I think it's important that maybe I highlight some of the aspects that the honorable members have raised, starting with the issue that Honorable Member Poole has raised around what are we doing as a department in terms of addressing underperformance. I think one of the aspects that we highlighted is really around advocacy role in terms of engaging with the different stakeholders with a clear understanding of the concurrent function that we have as the different spheres. But also from a planning point of view, we are very much involved in terms of analyzing the business plans, where then we have realized that the resultant underperformance is really based on poor planning. One of the areas that we have identified, it's where you find that provinces and metros, there has been poor planning and ensuring that by the time the projects are put on the business plans, they are in a ready to implement stage. So that is one of the areas that we are zooming into in terms of providing support as to how then we can begin to unblock and ensure that when we put plans and the business plans are approved, the projects are ready for implementation. Because if then the business plan is approved and then you realize there's still a lot of planning that needs to happen, either even in terms of the geological or any other technical aspects that still needs to be considered, that is one of the resultant aspects that contributes to underperformance, because time lapses when there's no actual implementation. So we are having conversations in terms of really the long-term planning. There's work that we have even initiated with the Metro, so that there's a clear long-term plan, and you know that through the multi-years, what work needs to happen. So that is work that really, as a sector, we are embarking on in order to realize that what we put as our plans and the commitments that we set, whether through the MTDP targets, then we begin to realize them on the ground. And I will then move to Honorable Ditebe's question, maybe make also input in terms of what are we doing around strengthening intergovernmental relations. And I want to emphasize the point that, you know, with the policy shift focusing on human settlements, that the intergovernmental relations role becomes central into us realizing that, because otherwise it's very difficult then to saying we want to work with other sector departments, but we don't have a clear strategy of how we are working around that. So as part of that, there's already a forums that we have. One of them is really focusing on the planning aspects, where then we engage on a quarterly basis with different sector departments, begin to understand where they are, how then we can also begin to align our interventions into the future. But one other aspect is to saying, what are the other mechanisms in terms of planning that can enable the capability? I think the issue of the capacity, whether in provinces or in the municipality, is an issue. But how then do we begin to also capitalize on the, whether technological advancement, so that then we can be able to improve efficiency going forward? But also when we begin to work around the business plans, those that are submitted by provinces, we are no longer only engaging with the provinces. We do engage with the district and the local municipalities to participate, so that everyone is on board and can confirm that going forward, then we are working as a sector going forward. And one of the areas that Chair and members we have really benefited from is the collaboration with SALGA, especially into looking at the challenges that we are faced with when it comes to implementation within the municipalities. So it's even in terms of then building the capacity and also identifying the challenges. So that is one other aspect that is part of the intergovernmental relations we are focusing on going forward. Chair, I think those are the aspects that I thought I should just respond to, and then I can leave off to DDG Dumalisile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DDG Dumalisile.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the members for the comments, inputs, and clarity-seeking questions. Chair, maybe even before I respond to some of the questions, and thanks to DDG Mhlongo, She has responded to some of the issues that were raised that I thought I would have to respond to. Maybe let me start with providing clarity before I respond to some of the questions that were raised by the 4 members. Chair, I do want to indicate that, and I think we did not do justice in our presentation as we're presenting. It's contained in the document, but as we're presenting, we're mindful of time. We didn't spend much time on the phases of the informal settlements upgrading, so that then it's clearer as to why we seem not to be making progress in some of the areas over and above the explanations that DG Mhlongo provided. Because when you look at the first phase, which is phase 1, where you do planning and project preparation, there's a lot of work that has to be done there. And I want to cite an example with Danun informal settlements in the city of Cape Town. The city of Cape Town had actually planned to actually finalize the upgrading in as far as Danun is concerned. And if you find Danun as one of the informal settlements on the plans of the city of Cape Town, but when you look at the achievement, it's 0. Without understanding what goes into the background in terms of preparing for the work that they had intended to do, then you may view it as a poor performance, besides the poor planning issues that the DDG has raised. The city of Cape Town had actually planned to reblock that informal settlements, but they have not been able to do that because they've had quite a number of consultations with the community, which is expected, because then that's why we encourage social facilitation and it's budgeted for. But because they're flatly refusing to move to where they're supposed to be relocated for purposes of reblocking, then the city of Cape Town is not able to move. Yes, you're going to see 0 next to it, but it has nothing to do with them failing to perform, but it has everything to do with the underlying issues that they still have to grapple with. And that goes with other areas where the poor planning that was mentioned is not necessarily a challenge. So I thought I should make an example with just but one phase. And I think members, some of them, including Member Gamede, they are quite familiar with the built environment and the infrastructure projects that on their own, these are projects that would actually run into multi-years because of the nature of the work that has to be done. Now, coming to the one of the questions that was raised by Honorable Poole in terms of the relocation, do we consult, or do municipalities, metros in particular, as well as the provinces, do they consult? As I indicated earlier on, it is a must that they consult. They will not be able to move an inch in terms of the upgrading of that particular informal settlements without the engagements with the communities. They are expected to consult all the way up until they conclude the project and they say this has now been formalized. When you look at phase 3, what still has to happen under phase 3, you still have to have the township establishment in the process. So over and above the bulk infrastructure that is expected, your sewer, your road networks, your water, your electrification, you still have to do township establishment, so that ultimately, when you say the informal settlement is formalized, then you can be able to even have your title deeds for those stands that have been fully serviced. And this is taking a bit long, given the challenges that are being experienced by the municipalities as well as the provinces on the ground. And over and above the engagements that DDG is referring to assist the municipalities to actually accelerate the delivery, Honorable Ditebe spoke to the targeted 10 informal settlements in every province that the DG had requested. Let every province prioritize at least 10 that are promising to migrate, so that we accelerate and we provide the necessary support as the national department in making sure that they progress. But we have actually, the target is far more than the 10 that we're referring to, because then we are expecting that 1,288 of such informal settlements should actually progress to that phase in making sure that ultimately we formalize these informal settlements. And the members are focusing only on quarter 3 and quarter 4 of the performance. But slide 25 and slide 26 does actually show what is it that we have been doing since the inception of the informal settlement upgrading conditional grant, which is 2020 and 2021, up until your information that we have captured there, which is 24-25. What we were showing here was only information in as far as 25-26 work has happened. And the last one, I think I'm done with the questions raised by Honorable Poole. The last one, I think I've touched on the one for Honorable Ditebe as well, because the others were responded to by DDG Mhlongo, where he was asking as to whether we have far more than the tens that we are requesting from the provinces. Yes, that's the 1,288 that I was referring to, where it is a sector target in making sure that we progress to that level. Honorable Gamede, I think there was a question and invariably provided a solution or proposed a solution where he is requesting that we should request provinces and the metros to provide acceleration plans within a period of 60 days. So Chair, with your permission and if the member allows, I can leave this at that point with the understanding that their request will be honored in as far as the report is concerned, Chairperson. The issue on the whether there is a policy view departmentally, and I'm not sure if DDG responded to that, whether there is a policy view departmentally in making sure that the structures are disaster resilient, including the informal settlements and all that. This was raised by Honorable Gamede. Chair, members would recall that early February there was an IBT summit which was intended to also test, amongst other things, to test within the national and international markets as to what is available in making sure that we get assistance, but also guidance in making sure that we migrate towards the provision of alternative building technologies throughout the sector. And we have seen quite a number of what is available on the ground, and we have we now have the norms and standards, and the DG, the minister, the deputy minister have actually made it very clear that we need to accelerate the implementation thereof. At this point in time, provinces have been allowed to utilize 2% of their allocation, and we will be going on the market to actually source those who are available with all their alternative building technologies, so that we can have them on our panel and they can be able to assist with whatever is available. That will also include our responses in as far as the disasters are concerned. We did previously share with the committee that ultimately where we're going is to make sure that we are able to respond promptly in terms of the disasters and provide permanent solution. But the alternative building technology should be able to assist in making sure that those structures can be able to stand the test of time in as far as the inclement weather conditions are concerned. Chair, on the questions that were raised by Honorable Hakilwe, with regards to Northwest, yes, we note the concern that the Honorable Member is raising, and it is true that the committee visited this area sometime in November, but with all the challenges that are on the ground, I think when the members went to these informal settlements, they were busy with reblocking, and whenever they come across challenges, they are not able to proceed until such time that they are able to find each other with the community members. But these are not the only informal settlements that Northwest is grappling with in terms of the implementation in making sure that they upgrade the informal settlements in their area as Northwest. There's quite a number of them, Chairperson. I think the rest of the issues were responded to by my colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. DG?
Chairperson, thank you very much. I think the questions have been covered. There's just an issue that we have been requested if we can delay on it and so which provinces, 5 provinces are not performing better than the others, and we would simply submit all information for all provinces, and we will put it in the order of percentage of performance. I think that information can be picked up from there as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Chairperson, before you take the next round of hands, I think there's one question that was not responded to, asked by myself and Honorable Kekakile on the non-state actors, especially in the field of formalization of informal settlements. I may have missed it, but perhaps if the DG or any of his executives could respond to that.
Okay.
Thank you,
I don't know
Chairperson.
whether you... Okay. Yes.
I can go first, and maybe the DG can also come in. Chair, I think, and thanks, Honorable Ditebe. I think I was battling to locate the name of one of these non-state actors, particularly those who were part of the engagements with the Portfolio Committee in the last session. When the NASP, the National Support Program for implementation of the informal settlements, was introduced, they actually partnered with one of them. I can't remember whether it's GAT, if I'm not mistaken. They actually partnered with them in terms of making sure that they understand what is happening on the ground and they're able to prepare accordingly. So they were part of those engagements through and through. But I also want to indicate, Chair, that the resolution of that meeting was such that through the DG, the department and the sector should consider engaging with these non-state actors. And there was an undertaking that they will be engaged, and the expectation from those non-state actors was that there should be some kind of a formation that should be recognized by the department and be able to regulate the work that they are doing. So yes, there is a decision, and there was an undertaking in the Portfolio Committee to do exactly that, but also to indicate that there has been engagements previously with such structures or such formations that are led by communities, Chairperson. I think there was also an issue under IGR. The DDG did respond partly, but I also want to confirm, Chairperson, that in our IGR structures, we do have representatives at a very senior level from SALGA that are actually familiar with the challenges that we are grappling with as a sector in trying to implement and accelerate the upgrading of the informal settlements, and where there are blockages, they are able to assist in that regard. So they have not been left behind. They are very much part of the processes, Chairperson. Thank you.
Chairperson, there was a question, yes, that I omitted when I was responding with regards to the data that is being collected by community organizations on the ground. And of course, currently, what we can allude to is that we know of such data that communities are collecting, especially with regards to the informal settlements upgrading initiatives. There are community organizations at settlement level that would collect the data, and that data would express the household formations and where they can be found. But at the current moment, what we are having challenges with is to bridge the data sets, because there's issues of what is giving us a challenge is the data structures, and of course, that's where the integration issues remains limited. But we are working on that. And as we are developing the new system, the expectation is that we are going to strengthen this linkage by enabling the integration of community collected data into a single standardized and verified national platform, because that helps us with verification as well as improving the planning and the issues of transparency between the communities and what we are collecting to show the registration of the need. So the process map that we have in place already, that is saying the format that we have, the data structure that is on the NHNR vis-a-vis that of the community data collection, we are looking at those so that we can align and then be able to find that integration. So that is all part and parcel of what we are looking at with regards to the new system that we are putting in place. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. And I think in our last meeting with the civil society organizations, there was a commitment from the department through the mouth of the DG that will continue engaging so that we can learn from each other, we can complement each other in delivering the services. We'll still expect that that should happen, and in due course, we'll get a report. Because maybe working together with them, you can get some assistance in one way or the other. But we'll get a report as per the commitment. Honorable Dlamini, followed by Honorable Abada. Okay, DG. I see DG wants to say something.
Chair. I just wanted to indicate that we have already started working with some of those non-state actors. For instance, for the past 7 years, we have been allocating funding to South African Cities Network to actually support us in terms of our program of supporting municipalities, and also on the upgrading program and the support program related thereto. And Chair will also be aware that even on the people housing process, we have been working very, very closely with the SDI, and they have been our partner since the signing of the Botshabelo Accord. And they had signed, and even themselves, when they did brief the committee, they had indicated that they've been working with us government since the days of Joe Slovo as Minister of Housing, and till today, we continue to work with them. There are others we have not directly engaged with other than through policy engagements. And I must indicate that in the reference groups around policy reviews, we have always engaged as many of the NGOs in the sector as possible, but we have never really engaged them programmatically around the issue of informal settlements upgrade as joint partners. We also noticed the value add they were doing around other issues, including community mobilization and community consultation, which we government were not investing resources in. But we were investing resources in terms of the services we outline in our upgrading program, for which are ring-fenced in terms of policy and in terms of funding by the Treasury and through the grant. We have been investing in that. And while they have been doing other things that the grant does not provide for. And we have been complementing each other from that point of view. The committee had called upon us to strengthen that relationship and formalize it, and not have it as a loose arrangement, which is currently the case, where we are observing their input and they observe our input. They are sometimes critical of our input, and we are critical of their own contribution in that. But we have been complementing each other. It's a fact that both of us acknowledge, and that we had committed to the committee that we will strengthen that, and suggested that perhaps the state must consider providing them with for same purpose. And to that extent, we said it is a matter we can explore within the current limited financial constraints, and that the first thing to do would be for them to be organized and have a structure of sort. We have agreed that we would be given the opportunity to coordinate them and invite them to the first session, and they would then have a forum with which they can directly engage with government. That part we have committed, Chair. We will come back and report on it, on how far we have gone with that. But we don't want to leave the committee with the impression that says there is nothing we are doing with the non-state actors. We are, and we have been committed with them from ever since till today on those two programs, the people housing program, as well as the support program to the municipalities. Thank you very much. Chair.
Thank you very much, DG, for that information. It really assists. Honorable Dlamini.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to yourself and all the colleagues that are present on the platform. Chair, my first question is to the department. I just want clarity on how does the department expect to reduce the backlog of the 3.5 million people who are registered on the NHNR but remain unapproved on the HSS? And what are the timelines then for achieving that and then having quite like a balanced report on that? And something very interesting on the Western Cape that took time to integrate itself into the system of the NHNR. What were the consequences of them being delayed? What is the response of the department? I hold a view which I think I would express from time and time again, that the Western Cape is treated, it isolates itself from the program of everybody else, and it must be treated specially. And I'd like to know, in cases like that, what would then be the consequence to get them in the program with all the other provinces who are expected to deliver targets, yet they will be the only province who would be treated differently or want to have different timelines over everybody else. And lastly, Chair, on the community of Retiville Ward 10, Mkondo in Mpumalanga, and I've brought this to the committee quite a number of times, that there were houses there that were built, they are over 5 years old, there's still no bulk infrastructure. I was there on Sunday. When they want to even charge cell phones, they must go to a shop where they are paying a fee to have their cell phones charged. There is no water. Children are sent back to their grandparents to live there. So there's a split in families now because the parents are trying to keep their houses by living in those houses in Ward 10. Chair. So what is the department?
Honorable Dlamini. Continue.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. What is the response of the department? And the sense of a feeling that I got when I was there on Sunday, it's just identical to the story in the Bible where Moses takes out the Israelites out of Egypt. And on their way to the promised land, the Israelites are saying to Moses, it was better when we were in bondage in Egypt than the journey you are taking us to. And that's exactly what the community of Ward 10 is experiencing. What was supposed to give them relief, they are now saying to us as public representatives, it was better when the department was not responding to their housing challenges because they are far worse off position now than they were before they got those houses. I don't know how many times this particular issue must be addressed before it is given attention, but it's really getting frustrating that a community for over a period of time doesn't have even the most basic of houses. Even the houses that they got are deteriorating, but they never once, as the department, even gone to them to address what is the issue and how come they're not responding to their issues, even though they have been brought forward to platforms such as these multiple occasions and there's been no responses. And I just want the department to go and pay particular attention to that community because they feel like now they've been excluded and isolated from what they should get as services. And no matter how many times I've brought it to this platform, there's still been no response. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Abada.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to you and to everybody on the platform. Thank you for the presentations today. Please forgive me in advance if I ask a question or make a comment that has already been made. There's some construction going on here and it was difficult to hear. I want to start by agreeing with Honorable Dlamini when it comes to the Western Cape. And I find that, or I feel that the Western Cape is treated differently to any other province in the country. And, you know, we constantly hear that the Western Cape is the best run province. But, you know, when we work the ground, we are with the people. Unfortunately, I don't see how this is possible. And, you know, we see the same problems all the time. And I just feel that the Western Cape needs a little bit more attention. Or not a little bit, but a lot of attention. So I agree with Honorable Dlamini there. With regards to my questions, like I said, please just forgive me if I ask them again. The NHNR reflects nearly 4 million people in need of housing, yet only 523,000 have been approved on the HSS. What is the purpose of registering millions of desperate South Africans if government cannot convert those registrations into actual housing communities? How many individuals on the NHNR have been waiting for more than 10, 15, or even 20 years? And what consequent management has been instituted against officials and departments responsible for these unacceptable delays? Given the department's admission of poor data quality, capacity constraints, and weak intergovernmental coordination, how can the committee have confidence in the credibility of the NHNR when housing allocations and planning decisions are based on this data? My recommendations to the department must provide the committee with a province-by-province breakdown of waiting times, including the number of beneficiaries who have been on the NHNR for more than 5, 10, and 15 years. A comprehensive audit of the NHNR should be undertaken to eliminate duplicate, outdated, and inaccurate records and restore confidence in the integrity of the database. The department must develop measurable targets to convert NHNR registrations into approved housing opportunities, with quarterly reporting to Parliament and consequent management for persistent underperformance. And I just have a final comment. You know, South Africans cannot live in a database. They cannot raise their children on a waiting list. The true measure of success is not how many names appear on the NHNR, but how many families are moved from informality, uncertainty, and poverty into the dignified human settlements. And, you know, Chair, we say this all the time. It's about dignity and humanity to our people. And, you know, 32 years into democracy, there has to be some change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Frenchman.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to all present on the platform. Chairperson, I would like to ask the department if they can please provide us with a more specific description on what they mean about informal settlement upgrades. Because in the one instance, I hear that in situ upgrades will be done, and on the other hand, I hear that informal settlements will be permanent, will remain. Chairperson, I would also like to understand what happens when there are floods and fires, which has been on the increase, and the interim upgrades are destroyed. What happens then? And Chairperson, what I'm trying to get to is that we have a disaster fund and we have the informal settlement upgrading fund. Will the department re-upgrade informal settlements that have been damaged by natural disasters? To me, this approach seems like it is just an unending cycle of a never-ending problem and a continuous waste of taxpayers' money. And Chairperson, I'm concerned that we as a committee of the 7th Parliament will not have been making meaningful change to the housing pandemic that we are facing. We have many projects running and each one costing the department money, but the results are not showing. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Megagula.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon, Chair Can I close my video
Yes.
to accommodate the network? Thank you. Chair, I think other issues uncovered by other members, but I'm on the national housing needs. The concern is that I think we last have a problem. I mean, issue ziveza. I think it was 2006 or 2005. My concern is that sometimes we find that this data is not updated accordingly because of that iziveze is too long. I think it's after 15 to 20 years now. But also on the issue of education to among the communities, that some of the communities will have Form C, yaka 1997, but yaka mama, who's no longer alive. But they'll be saying that they'll be going to the office to say, we're here to check for umama, indlu kamama. They're no longer, they don't even understand that. That was the data. That name was used for data as to how many people do not have izindlu at that time. So with that form, the perception is that they're waiting for the house. Once they see houses are built, some of them, without knowledge, they'll use the last numbers on that form when they see the house having that 3 numbers. They said, but we've seen that the stand number of my mom is approved. I can go and show you. So I think the municipalities should utilize, or we must encourage the officials which are working on the, I know Egurland, they've got triple Cs, and each triple C, they have the unit which it deals with the human settlement. Those officials now, they are there, but they're not having a lot of work because it's no longer, people are no longer frequent those offices. They frequent Alberton most of the time. But those people, those officials in those triple Cs, they must be utilized to go and educate from time to time. Maybe if a councillor has a meeting, they must be part of those meetings and educate Abantu about to come and update if the person who had Form C has passed on. And I also, maybe at national level, I don't know what we can do, because if the person has passed on, the perception is that the person must be replaced by a person who is still alive. That also, it should be an education by the municipalities to the communities that it cannot, a person who's alive can have put her name or his name on the data also. But on other concern, it's not a concern for me, but I've got my recommendations. I'm sorry, Chairperson, on the envisaged policy development which the department is preparing to do in terms of prevention and or maybe reducing the issue of having a lot of informal settlements. In that policy, if we can develop a policy which can have consequences, and it should be a harsh a decision, a person who will be found being at the informal settlement while he or she was allocated a house in a certain province or in a certain area and did not occupy the house, but some are selling them and come back to the informal settlement. Some, what they do, they rent those houses. Some they rent them to the illegal immigrants. So we must have a sentence or an act or a sub, I don't know what is it, but we need to punish all those people. And those people who've got houses in the township or in the suburbs, but when there's a new informal settlement developing, they go and have more than one shacks. Some they're using for taverns, some are tuck shops, and some for other businesses, even some brothels. So if we can have a harsh punishment, I think that can stop. That a person, it can't be, maybe we propose that those people should be arrested and they can't get less than a certain number of years in jail without any fine. I think that can assist us a lot because most of the informal settlements and also Che, with public works having a lot of houses which are allocated to officials who are new in the area or coming from other provinces to work in that certain area. What they're doing is that if a person is moving, buying a house, they lease or they rent those houses which do not belong to them to other people. I think if we can also work with public works with that information, they must utilize those people because public works has a lot of houses all over the country which are occupied illegal. Some are empty because a person will just move out without notifying even the department. But if that also the public works can consider working with our Department of Human Settlements, allocating some of the people, especially those who are earning from 3,500 to 22,000, they can be allocated and afford those houses to pay. And maybe also in terms of land, because the public works has a lot of land lying all over, which are not utilized, and the buildings which they're not using, we can turn them into a social housing. I think that can also reduce this housing needs of ours. It's a proposal, it's a suggestion. If it can happen, I think we will be on the winning side and trying to reduce the long list of housing needs. Thank you, Chairperson.
DG and your team, maybe let's start in the same order. Mulalo, followed by DG Nhlongo, the DG Dumalisile, and finally the DG.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The Honorable Jamini asked a question around the issue of reducing registrations into housing delivery. And what that was also echoed by Honorable Abada, and now lastly by Honorable Magagul. So the question that they are asking is, why should registration continue to be done when we are not realizing housing delivery? And of course, from where we are sitting, we say, yes, it still matters that households or citizens go and register. Because if we do not have those records of where the households are and what, because they are also required to indicate what type of housing assistance they require. So we still need that to be done, because that is also the starting point for all the allocation processes. And of course, what there's issues of enforcement on our side that needs to be put in place to say those only that are registered on the NHNR should be considered for the allocation. And of course, the other issue is, yes, we will understand where the demand is and the type of assistance that is required. And of course, the other issue that is of importance to us is that then when the allocation comes, when there's a project that is approved within the area where the registration has been done, then we are also we can be in a position to be able to prioritize those that are eligible, those that are vulnerable, the elderly, and those with disabilities. And of course, there's issues of we are sure that the committee understands that yes, there's a lot of demand out there, and of course the millions, as we're indicating, they've registered. But the limitations of delivery is based on the fiscal constraint issues. You find that within a particular financial year, there's a limited amount of money that can yield the outputs that would then result in addressing that demand. And of course, as we are dealing with these constraints of the fiscals, as well as issues of land that is serviceable to be able to produce projects, then this long waiting list come in. But what are we doing as a department to be able to deal with this? These issues of, we have overemphasized as we're speaking since morning that we have embarked on the data cleanup of the NHNR, where we are removing the duplicates, the inactive records, those that would confirm current housing need, and those with outdated information. That is what we are embarking on. And we are not just embarking on that on the NHNR as it is. We've indicated already that it's a legacy system, and we intend to replace it by the new system that will then improve on all this, the integration aspect with the other data sources that are there, the issues of verification, the issues of checking that there's data accuracy and linkages to projects. That's what the new system that we are bringing in intends to achieve. And of course, in doing that, we would still want to emphasize that from time to time, we'll keep on updating on how far these processes are going, because it is not something that we can do overnight. It's going to take us a long time to be able to deal with this data. Of course, the almost 4 million, when we start removing the duplicates and the inactive records and those that do not require to be there, updated information, these numbers will start to change as we move along. But it's a process that it takes place at municipal level and then goes to the provincial level. And of course, Honorable Magagula talked to Operation Ziveze, where those that are still eligible or those that are still interested in getting their housing, if they do Ziveze, the numbers, we can start to see the change. But for each record, because we don't delete the record, we'll be able to say what happened to a specific record and why do we see the numbers. If they do drop, we would be able to account for them, because there are no deletions that get done. But what we are doing is a data cleanup with the new system. Chairperson, I will leave the Western Cape issue to the DG with regards to consequence management. And of course, there's also the one question that was raised around consequences to officials that would delay the capacity, that would delay the process on the NHNR. And what we would like to indicate is that mostly the challenges with regards to capacity constraints is mainly the staff turnover. Staff turnover, that would mean that the officials that were technically had technical capacity to be able to work on the system, manage the system, as well as do the necessary updates and capturing and verification. That is what would leave the system, and we need to redo the training of those that will be newly appointed. And of course, the issue of the skills themselves, that's something that sometimes take time in municipalities for them to get, but that would cause most of the delays. So I think I'll stop here, Chairperson, and leave some of the questions for the DG to attend to. Thank you very much.
DG Longo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thank you to the members. Chair, I just want to focus on the aspects that were raised by Honorable Member Umama Gagola, and really appreciate the wisdom and the guidance in terms of the aspects that we need to look into as part of our policy reforms, because indeed, while we do have interventions, but if we don't have measures that really are going to deal with the consequences, where then we experience a cyclical approach where citizens receive housing solutions, but then afterwards then go and join the queue, either in terms of being located in the informal settlements. So it is an area that we are looking into, so that we also make sure that then there's effective and efficient utilization of resources. The issue around the shack lots, as they are commonly called, it's really a big problem. Whether then it's where then even the citizens opting to rent out their houses. Okay, I think. Okay, where they are renting out their houses to illegal foreigners. It is a challenge that the department is looking into, so that then we do have policy enablers that are really going to discourage such going forward. In relation to the aspects to the engagements that the member is advising with Public Works, I must confirm that there is indeed work that is in progress. I think the initial work that we started with Public Works was to have discussions around the release of public-owned land. But we have recently then had an engagement that is also focusing to saying, besides focusing on the release of state land for human settlements, but then how do we also, in terms of the buildings that are owned by government, and that are not being utilized, that we can work to repurpose those for human settlements options, whether it's depending on the location, also is even in terms of rental options going forward. And that is then the conversation that as part of Operation Vulindlela, we are embarking on, so that we begin then to pilot within starting with the metros, so that then we are able then to see how we can work around that in terms of repurposing of such government-owned buildings for human settlements related programs. But also that will then also begin to shape in terms of what then our subsidy focus should be, and any other enhancements that we need then to take into consideration going forward. So that's what I wanted to add, Chairperson. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. DG Malisile.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to the members for the questions. Chair, let me start with the question from Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Dlamini is correct. This matter was not raised for the first time. It has been brought to attention by Honorable Dlamini on a number of occasions. And Chair, I do want to commit that, as suggested, we will send a team for site verification. And the reason is based on the number of issues that the member has raised. And previously, the report we received from the province on what the Mkondo municipality has done, particularly for this area, was actually giving an account to say they have actually resolved the issues that were brought to their attention by the community and the municipality in as far as sewer and water is concerned. They were also dealing with the title deeds issues that were raised in that area. But when it comes to the electricity connections, they had actually indicated that the municipality itself had applied to DMRE, and Ritville was one of the areas. So if the member was there on as early as, rather as late as Sunday, and things are still not resolved, we will then have to visit that area and engage with the area, the municipality, as well as the province chief. So I do make that undertaking that we will attend to that, Honorable Dlamini. Now, the issue that was raised by Honorable Frenchman, where she's actually indicating her concern with regards to, or rather where she's requesting for clarity with regards to the informal settlement upgrading versus the in-situ upgrading. Chair, I do want to indicate that as government generally, and I think throughout, even beyond government, we have come to recognize the fact that many people have settled themselves in these areas, and they've been there for the longest time, purely on the basis of wanting to be able to easily access jobs, be able to access schools and other social networks. And because they have settled themselves in these areas that are informal settlements, but we have a duty to improve the quality of lives in areas within which they reside. And in the process of improving the quality of life, Chair, we want to make sure that we formalize those settlements and provide basic services such as water, sewer connections, and anything and everything, so that we can be able to prevent unnecessary disasters, but also to also prevent issues of health hazards in those areas. Now, in trying to do that, what do? We do in-situ upgrading. And the in-situ upgrading, meaning that we will do and install the services, which is your bulk infrastructure, your water and everything, with members still being there. Unless, like I said, in terms of the categorizations, unless there are challenges with the area where they are, or the land is privately owned, or there are hazardous areas, or those areas are prone to floods and everything else. But other than that, the in-situ means that upgrade with people being exactly there, with minimal disruption in terms of moving them away and bringing them back and everything. That's basically the in-situ. So the in-situ is part of the upgrading. It just gives you an indication that the approach you use in upgrading is that they shouldn't move where possible, then do the upgrading with them being exactly there. The second issue, excuse me, the second issue that Honorable Frenchman raised was the upgrading funding vis-a-vis the disaster management or disaster intervention funding. Chair, I do want to acknowledge that the observation on the side of Honorable Frenchman is actually correct. However, we are mandated by law that we should intervene whenever there is a disaster, irrespective of where the area is, irrespective of who are the people who are actually affected by the disaster. We are expected to actually respond. What becomes a challenge, which I raised earlier on, is in instances where in an informal settlement, whether it's a metro or a province that has actually planned to upgrade that area, and there is resistance on the side of the community to actually assist the process, then we have a serious challenge because we still remain with informal settlements that are congested, because the whole issue of the informal settlements upgrading, like I said earlier on, it's twofold. You improve the livelihoods of the people, you improve the living conditions of the people, but also it helps in terms of mitigating the potential risk in as far as hazards as well as disasters are concerned. So as long as they are congested and they don't want to actually allow a province or a metro to assist with the reblocking and proper resettlements, we will continue to see those challenges. And unfortunately, we will continue to actually fund the interventions that are required in those areas, depending on the nature of the disaster. The last one is just to add on what DDG Mhlongo has actually alluded to in as far as the public works is concerned, and this is a matter raised by Honorable Magagula. There is also a second layer or the other leg to what she has said. We have approached Cabinet when we were trying to come up with interventions to accelerate the implementation of the Military Veterans Housing Project, or program rather. And one of the requests that one of the proposals we presented to Cabinet, which was endorsed, was to work with Public Works and for Public Works to make available their state-owned houses, so that then at least they can be allocated to the qualifying military veterans who are actually earning far more than the threshold when it comes to the BNG houses. And to this end, Chair, I do want to indicate that there has been positive response from Public Works, and Gauteng has approached Public Works on the basis of the Cabinet approval, and Public Works has so far allocated them 4 of those houses that they will then need to work on them together with Public Works and allocate them to the deserving military veterans members. Similarly with Northwest, they have approached their provincial Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, and they have been allocated land to be able to assist in that regard. So yes, DDG Mhlongo is correct. We are working with them, and not only on one program, but on a number of programs, which actually responds to the proposals that have been made by Honorable Magagula. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just on the matter of the Western Cape, Chair, is to indicate that we do not treat any provinces any different than we would. All provinces, we treat them the same. The instruments by which we assess provinces are the same. The instruments by which we grant provinces funding are the same. The targets we set are as according to the size of the pest as well as the size of the need on the ground. And we have been prioritizing. We do have differences of opinions from time to time with almost all provinces and not just only the Western Cape. And where that has happened, there are mechanisms in place to deal with those. There are fora at which all of us are supposed to do so. The reporting templates are the same for all provinces, inclusive of the Western Cape. And even where we had seen, in this case, that they were running their own system separately, we had nudged them into agreeing to come into the national picture so that all of us are on the same page and all of us can use the same instruments to assess where we are supposed to be and to plan collectively. And we were indicating that by virtue of them having a separate register, it was blindsiding us in terms of demand side management and the need. And after several engagements of persuasion, they finally accepted that they need to come into the national register. They have since done so. And we are busy now with the migration of their data from their older register that they've been using separately into a centralized register, the LHRR. And therefore, Chair, we do not see how we can be accused of treating Western Cape any different than any other province. And even previously, where Western Cape had not spent money, we applied the same set of rules we applied to all other provinces. And we did a stop and reallocation of those funds to other provinces. And where they do perform better and they perform well, and other provinces don't, we do take money from other provinces and give to them. So it's the same system, it's the same rules. We apply the same right across the board. And we do not treat any province any different than it would be. The only other times we would say we treat provinces quite differently is if they have a burden of targets and work to be done. And therefore, you would see that the bulk of our support will be linked to where impact will be the greatest. And it naturally goes to the three biggest provinces, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Western Cape, for obvious reasons that they carry the bulk of the targets. That if we succeed in those three provinces, we are almost half done with what we need to do. And nevertheless, that does not say that the other provinces 6 are being neglected. They are actually also been provided with the support, the necessary capacity, and even focus attention, because we also understand that in order to mitigate migration, we've got to invest in those poorer provinces, and we've got to also be more biased, as you would see with our grant framework, that we are much more biased to underprivileged and under-resourced areas. And therefore, for that reason, knowing very well that those 6 provinces rely more on the grant than on their equitable share to deliver, we pay specific attention also to them. So in that way, there is no way we can say that Western Cape has been treated any different than any other province. Let me also touch upon one of the matters that have been raised relative to the issue of disasters. Even Operation Dudula and others may have raised concerns about the issue of foreign nationals, legal or illegal. But in terms of the law South Africa has accented to, and some of the charters it has signed and international instruments, we are obligated to give emergency assistance where the need arises. And we then you would see that when we move on to the other interventions, semi-permanent and permanent, that would not extend the same leave to illegal foreigners or even foreigners that are legal in South Africa do not access those services. But in an emergency, Chairperson, everyone, absolutely everyone, we are joined by international law to do so and to provide everyone who finds themselves in that emergency. So our emergency response, and up until the state of having a temporary mass care center, then that's where we would provide assistance and immediate relief. But that's where we end. With all other interventions such as TEAs and TRUs and ultimately permanent solutions, those are specifically reserved for South African citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG. I think all questions were answered. I just received a message which I will forward to you, the Minister, the Deputy Minister, DG Malisile, DG, that it's about families displaced by a disaster in Hermanus within the Overstrand municipality in Western Cape. The message says there's nothing that is being done. These families are located in a hall or accommodated in a hall next to the beachfront, whose weather is not that favorable. But I'll forward the message to Minister, Deputy Minister, DG and DDG, so that we see whether there are interventions that can be done. I think maybe before I allow the DM to give her closing remarks, DDG Dumalisile promised that she will send somebody to verify what Honorable Dlamini has raised on Mukondo. If we can have that report, DDG and DG, by the 24th of June, as to just a report back on what you found in that regard. And there was also a suggestion by Honorable Gamede. I think the DGG said she agrees with that. We'll also get a report. But in passing, DG, what is happening with the accredited municipalities like Polokwane with regard to what are they doing? Are they playing a role after being accredited?
Chairperson, thank you very much. In terms of our accreditation, you would know that our arrangements in terms of the door and the transferring arrangements are that we transfer to provinces primarily. And Treasury had also agreed with us that the metros are big enough and sizable enough to also transfer to them. So primarily our grants are intended to be transferred to provinces and to metros alone. But then again, from time to time, certain provinces do indicate that some of their municipalities have sufficient capacity to be able to be delivery agents as well. And they recommend them to be considered to be an accredited municipality by which that municipality can actually be our delivery agent. We then take that municipality through a due diligence exercise and the rigors of testing whether indeed it has sufficient capacity. And where they often lack some aspect of that capacity, we provide training and support for them to actually meet our thresholds. And after which we accredit them. The accreditation framework actually is that we accredit you at different levels. We may accredit you to deliver only primary services. We may accredit you to as high as delivering all tertiary services, meaning wall-to-wall, from bulk until top structures and everything. And that you run the entire process depending on where your capacity levels are. And as you do improve and you are able to do even other services, we can upgrade that accreditation. And we do review it from time to time to check if you are still compliant and you are able to still provide the services. And either we downgrade you or we reconfirm where you are or we upgrade you. So those municipalities, once accredited, it means that then the province in which they reside may, from their own resources, take resources for projects intended in that municipality, give them over to that municipality and say, run the program yourself and account back to us. And that's how the accreditation framework works. And we have had some instances where some accredited municipalities, you find that their provinces are reluctant for one reason or the other to give them the money to do the work after we have transferred to them. But the transferring arrangements are in this case between the transferring officer in the province being the HOD and the municipal manager in a municipality. So consequently, Chairperson, one needs to indicate and say that the accreditation framework, we are reviewing it, and also having seen some of the difficulties and challenges that have been visited upon the process of municipalities that are unable to complete projects. We are visiting this and we are also trying to beef up our own capacity to be able to do regular reviews so that we are able every 2 years or so to actually check each and every accredited municipality if it still meets with our requirements, and to also get them to sign personal warranties even to the national government, whether they are capable of delivering the services that they are accredited to deliver. So that's in a nutshell, Chair. But we had earlier in the first 3 months of the term of this committee presented on the accreditation framework and the revisions we are making to it. We have made some progress in that space, and if it's opportune on the program of the committee, we can come back to brief you in full once more how far we are and what changes have we instituted into the framework. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, DG. I think the portfolio committee will really be interested in that report, which municipality fall in that category of being accredited, and each municipality is accredited to what level, so that we're able to invite even those municipalities to come and account on what they are doing. If there are frustrations with provinces, we're able to be aware of them, and where there's a need for interventions, we'll do that. Secretary, if you can note that, we'll then discuss with the department as to when can we have this thing. But like the DG is promising, a full report would be coming. If we can note that and be part of our priorities. And then the Free State, Northwest, KZN, Western Cape, you remember we had reports. We had follow-up meetings with them, checking how the progress with regard to issues raised when we were doing our oversight. I think at some stage we might need them to come back for the last time, if possible, regarding the said oversights, just to give us some. And they would want to report to the committee about that progress. Let's note that also. And like the minister has said, that they are ready to meet, the department and SHRA are ready to meet with the portfolio committee. You remember in our last meeting with SHRA, we excused them because they were not ready. And we said the minister must go and meet with them to come and present to the portfolio committee. Today, the minister said they are ready. I think we'll have to slot them in, secretary, as a matter of agency, so that they are able to give that report. I think the DG is also listening in that regard. At some stage, DG will also expect a report on the IBTs, that 2%, and see whether we're making progress, whether there's appetite, and how do we move in that regard. In some instances, I'm told there's resistance because people don't understand this thing of IBTs as opposed to brick and mortar and so on. So we'll expect a report in that regard. There's also, not sure DG whether you once implemented it. There was this issue of, I think you said in Eastern Cape, we are trying to come with a program of doing away with TRUs, but when people face disaster, you immediately build a permanent structure. I don't know whether it's working, but the committee would like a report in that regard, because it will be, that intervention will really help. Instead of wasting money building a temporary structure, if we are able to, and we have capacity to go straight into a permanent structure for people who have been affected by disasters. That would really help. I think the committee was once told that we'll start in Eastern Cape, and if it works, you'll then extend it to other provinces. If we can get that report, Secretary, if you can note that, because we would want to get that report. And where possible, DG Dumalisile, with your site verification in Kondo, because the honorable member is always raising this thing. If in one way or the other she can be informed when you do this, so that she's able to do her oversight, if that is possible, because please let's do that. The issue of informal settlements, I think informal settlements such as Slovo Park, Honorable Khakilo raised others in Northwest like Popomolefe. If we can just, Honorable Jutebe also raised another one in Free State. We can just show them, and we get a feedback in due course. But meeting with Shra, report on accredited municipalities, and report on IBTs, and a report on what you found when you try to move away from TRUs to permanent structure in Eastern Cape. Are you succeeding? Do you think is something we can continue with? If the committee can be briefed about that. Otherwise, we are done. If I can allow the Deputy Minister to deliver her closing remarks, and then we'll release you and remain with committee members just to deal with the last item of minutes. Dear.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you for having us. And I want to take this opportunity, Chairperson, to perhaps highlight few issues that the department is acknowledging that we got to be aggressive in terms of social facilitation, be it on the reallocations or the IBTs where the people are not convinced. But I must also say that there are areas and provinces where the department has provided the IBTs, which are in fact accepted by some of those communities. So we are going to intensify on social facilitation. Fundamental challenges when it comes to the issues of the backlog in our country, housing backlog. And I think Honorable Magagula articulates this particular point, because someone sells a house and then go and re-establish him or herself in an informal settlement. And once that person is told that he won't be getting a house in multiple times from government, that's where you see the unrest emerging in our society. And we got to try and have mechanisms to deal with that, because we're compelled by the law to upgrade the informal settlements or where people are settling, there must be basic services, which speaks to the upgrading of the informal settlements. When there's a fire, the ambulances, the fire brigades, firefighters must be able to enter and navigate through, which is why we do also the reblocking as part of the upgrading of the informal settlements. And the housing issue in South Africa and the backlog, it is very much multifaceted. It's not a straitjacket challenge, because you realize that at some point there are people who are occupying houses, and there are people who are holding title deeds of these houses that are occupied by someone else. So the issues of backlog is multifaceted, and as such, the HDA is intervening in the Western Cape in that regard, to say you are an occupant in this house, but you are not holding a title deed. And this is a process that we are suggesting. So the HDA assists with that process, Honorable Chairperson. So I'm hoping that when we come back to the portfolio committee, we would have perhaps outlined or brought the non-actors that Honorable Ditebe is concerned about, and I thought UDG also will bring to the response and the attention of the members that an active participation of these non-actors. It was recent at the IBT summit, DG, where the department minister, through the minister, signed a social compact, because these non-actors are the ones that will be helping the department when we do our social facilitation as well on the IBTs, speaking to the people, their people, so that they understand that the IBTs are a new technology to provide decent housing for the people of South Africa. So we are working closely, DG is correct. We are working closely with the non-actors. We take them with us along in all the programs that are there, and the recent one would have been the IBT Presidential Summit. And thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, and your delegation. Staff from the ministry and staff from that support officials and our parliamentary staff. You can be released. We'll remain with honorable members just for 5 minutes to deal with the last item, which is minutes. Secretary, can we fly the minutes?
Hello, Chairperson.
Yes, Secretary.
Can you see the minutes?
Yes, the minutes of the 3rd June. That was last week.
Yes,
Let's
Chair.
scroll down. Let's scroll down. There is agenda, attendance, parliamentary support staff, Ministry of Human Settlements, officials from department, Funakwazi, SDI Alliance, and where's the other one?
Development Action Group.
Development Action Group, PATs.
Yes.
And there were other guests from Parliament. Date is opening and welcome, apologies. Adoption of the agenda. Opening remarks by Chairperson. Presentations. Ndifuna ukwazi. Deck. SDI Alliance. Members noted the following: inputs by the Department of Human Settlements, recommendations, right. Committee was adjourned at 12:40. There is a set of minutes. Let's see whether it's a true reflection of what transpired in our last meeting. Are there corrections, amendments to the minutes? I don't see a hand. It means you have captured everything very well. Can I get a mover for the adoption of minutes? Can I get a mover for the adoption of minutes? Evan.
I move for the adoption of the minutes, Chairperson.
Honorable Frenchman moves. Can I get a seconder? Honorable Makagula.
Thank you, Chairperson. I second for the adoption of the minutes.
Honorable Makagula seconding. Is there an alternative view? Nothing. Minutes as adopted as such. Remember, Secretary, you still owe the Portfolio Committee the, what do you call it? I forgot, but it's something that we use to follow up on resolutions taken by the committee. Whether they are implemented, still outstanding, and so on.
Resolution tracker, Chair.
Tracking mechanism. Yeah.
Yes.
So can we, together with the researcher and the content advisor, can you please work on that one? And they will present it to the management committee and then present it to the committee so that we start to implement it. Shouldn't be a tedious thing because we said we'll track these resolutions on a quarterly basis so that we see what is implemented and so on and so on. Can we record that again as something that we still owe the committee?
Yes, Chairperson, then we can present it on the 24th.
Yeah, but work on it with your colleagues as a team. Then possibly next week we can have a management committee meeting. And then on the 24th, we can present it to the committee to approve.
Noted, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I think that's the last item on our agenda. Thanks very much for your time. Like I said, we still want to thank the Minister, the Deputy Minister, the DG, the two DGs and their staff, support staff to the Minister, support staff to the DG, our parliamentary staff, especially the Secretary, the administrator, the researcher, and the content advisor.
Thanks, Chair.
We want to thank you very much. We are able to succeed in whatever we're doing because of your support. Thank you very much, honorable members. We'll meet at 3 in the House. Remember, today there are a number of questions directed to the Minister of Human Settlements. The meeting stand adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Long live the chair. Thank you.
Recording stopped.